Good evening and welcome. Tonight is Monday, June 3rd, 2024. This is a regular meeting of the Minnetonka City Council. I will call this meeting to order and ask you to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. England, would you please call roll?
Rameli.
Here.
Coakley.
Here.
Foster Bolton.
Here.
Shack.
Here.
Wilburn.
Here.
Calvert.
Here.
Wearsome.
Here. Next item is approval of the agenda, and there is an addenda. Mr. Funk.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. We have three considerations on tonight's addenda. One is related to item 14A, which is the Purgatory Park Master Plan. Plain language has been revised to more accurately reflect the park direction in section 2, plan recommendations, dogs and parks. Updated pages have been added, and then additionally feedback and a petition were received after distribution of the packet, and those also have been added to the addenda. And then I would just pause there, and if you look under item 14A, in that addenda, you'll see more specific language that I'm referencing. And then item 14C is your second consideration on the addenda, which is related to the ordinance amending Minnetonka Code Section 930.030, Subdivision 6, relating to overnight parking restrictions. Staff did receive additional comments after publication of the staff report. Those comments have been added for your consideration. And then last, related to item 14D, which is a concept plan for Amira Villas Minnetonka at 901 Carlson Parkway. Staff received a comment after publication of the staff report, and that too has been added for your consideration. So with that, Mayor and Council, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Funk. So we have an agenda and that is amended. Is there a motion? Councilmember Calvert.
Thank you, Mayor. I move approval of the agenda as amended.
And a second. Councilmember Coakley.
I second.
All right, we've got a motion by Councilmember Calvert and a second by Councilmember Coakley. Ms. England, please call roll.
Rameli.
Agree.
Coakley.
Yes.
Foster Bolton.
Yes.
Shack.
Yes.
Wilburn.
Yes.
Calvert.
Yes.
Wearsome.
I think that's me. Yes. Okay. All right. Everyone's a little punchy tonight, but that's all right. So next item is approval of minutes, and we have 3 sets, and I think we can do all of those in one motion approval. So item 5A is the May 6, 2024 regular meeting minutes. 5B is the May 2024 regular meeting minutes, and item 5C is April 19th and 20th, 2024 special study session minutes. Is there a motion, Councilmember Calvert?
Thank you, Mayor. I move approval of the May 6th, 2024 regular meeting minutes, the May 20th, 2024 regular meeting minutes, and the April 19th and 20th, 2024 special study session minutes.
Councilmember Shack.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion by Councilmember Calvert and a second by Councilmember Shack. Ms. England, please call roll.
Rameli.
Yes.
Coakley.
Yes.
Foster Bolton.
Yes.
Shack.
Yes.
Wilburn.
Yes.
Calvert.
Yes.
Wearsome.
Yes, motion carries. Item 6 is special matters, and we have several of those tonight. The first is a Natural Resources Division overview, and we have Leslie Yetka, who is the Natural Resources Manager, to give us that report. So welcome, Ms. Yetka.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you for inviting me here tonight to talk a little bit about our Natural Resources Division here at the city and the work that we do, and it's great that we have such a large audience for this topic. I'm sure this is why they're here. Just a little bit about myself. As the mayor mentioned, my name is Leslie Yetka. I'm the Natural Resources Manager, and really what that means is I manage the Natural Resources Division, which is in our Public Works Department here at the city. And a little bit about me, I've lived in Minnetonka my whole life, except for when I went to college. I have a Bachelor's of Art in Biology from Macalester College. I have a master's degree in horticulture, where I focused on native plant revegetation in wetlands. And then I also have a master's degree in public affairs from the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, which was a mid-career master's when I realized if I really want to influence our natural resources, I really wanted to focus on policy and people. So that's a little bit about my background. As far as the city, I know you all live here, so you're pretty familiar with the community. But it bears repeating that we have some natural resources that are not unique to the city, but really shape our community. One is our water resources. We have hundreds of wetlands throughout our community. We have 13 lakes and creeks that are really important resources for our community. We have a significant canopy cover, so lots of trees. When I tell people what makes Minnetonka unique, it's that we have a lot of wetlands and we have a lot of trees. We have parks, we have large community parks, we have many neighborhood parks. All of those present opportunities as public land to really impact and protect our resources. A lot of our community is private property. So while we can certainly manage resources on public land, we really need to tap into the interest and willingness of landowners to affect natural resources on their own property. And then one thing that also makes us unique is that we have 4 watershed organizations that overlap our community, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So some of the challenges we face regarding natural resources, and I won't go through all of them here, but I know you are aware of invasive species issues, our altered community forest, because we do develop our land so that we can live here. Pollinator loss, climate change is certainly a big impact. And then people, humans, and how they manage their properties, and then also sort of their perceptions of natural resources. And while I talk about challenges, I want to make sure that I state that this is really not unique to our community. It's really very common for any suburban community in the metro area. So while we like to be unique in this regard, we're not. We do influence the environment. So it's fortunate that we have a long history of natural resources protection, and we have decision makers like you and your predecessors that really supported allocating resources for natural resources protection. So in our division, we have 9 full-time technical staff, which I know many of you know that's really almost unheard of for a suburban community like we have. We have forestry staff, we have natural resource specialists, we have a restoration specialist, we have public engagement coordinator, and we have a park and trail manager who will be speaking here tonight later, who's also under the umbrella of the Natural Resources Division. We also rely on seasonals throughout the year, tree inspectors, restoration seasonals, and then we also participate in the AmeriCorps program. So we have 1 to 2 AmeriCorps members who volunteer their service with us to learn skills related to land management and urban forestry. So we are wealthy in terms of resources and people. So what we do, and you might recognize this from actually your budget packet information, but our division really manages the planning, development, and stewardship of our community's natural resources. And that is primarily guided by the Natural Resources Master Plan that the Council adopted in 2021. And so the focus areas, again, are urban forestry management, natural resources conservation, enforcement of our natural resource-focused ordinances during land development activities, public land stewardship, and then environmental education and community engagement through volunteering, through public events, education, and things like that. So that guide, the master plan really does guide what we do on a day-to-day basis. So just to tap in a little bit more about with some of these focus areas, just to kind of help you understand what we do on a day-to-day basis and how it may impact some of the decisions that you're making. So forestry, we have a forestry team. They work to manage tree diseases, so emerald ash borer, I am sure all of you can see the impact it's having in our community. We still have Dutch elm disease, we still have oak wilt, but certainly emerald ash borer is at the forefront of the work we're doing. We try to replant. We certainly can't replant every tree that's lost, but we have a history of not only replanting on public land, but making trees available to private property owners when they lose trees to disease or storms. We've been a Tree City USA for over 25 years now, so that's really exciting. We do park pruning, sort of that tree care and management, so watering, pruning, things like that. We do some research. Conservation arboriculture is a fancy word for urban forestry research. We partner with the university quite a bit. And then we are routinely inventorying and monitoring the forest that we do have. So when it comes to habitat restoration, and certainly trees are part of our habitat, but when we think about our parks and our natural areas, we really focus on the whole ecological system, not just the trees. So if you're familiar with the Natural Resources Master Plan, one of the things that calls for is development of park habitat restoration plans. So these are more specific to a park, and they really guide all of our restoration activities in that park over a 20-year period. We have active habitat restoration happening right now, over 350 acres and growing. We have a forestry mower, which is a piece of equipment that really does a number on buckthorn, so that's something we've been making use of lately. Certainly invasive species control, seeding, planting, and then we are embracing the use of fire to manage these plant communities when we can do so. We also are responsible for inspecting for noxious weeds. We have a designated weed inspector for the city, and we have to respond to noxious weeds when they're brought to our attention. We also have a lot of volunteers actively participating in restoration efforts. Last year we had over 400 volunteers working in our parks at various capacities, and over 4,000 hours were dedicated just to restoration work in our parks. So that's really exciting, and that number is growing, so that's really good. Another important piece of work that we do is development and compliance work, and so this is really ensuring that the ordinances that you develop that really guide how development happens are actually applied and enforced over time. So we review all site plans that come in for what I phrase our natural resource focused ordinances. So this is tree protection, wetland protection, shoreland, erosion and sediment control, and landscaping, ensuring that we have native plants incorporated into our landscape plans. And then we do site inspections to make sure all of this is taking place on a routine basis. We also work to educate local contractors. They're an important audience that we work with regularly to make sure that they understand what the ordinances say and how they can actually meet the intent of those ordinances. And then we respond to a lot of resident calls, as you can probably imagine. People want to build a deck or build a shed, and we want to make sure they're not encroaching on some of our valued natural resources. Water resources. So this is something worth calling out. As I said, we have a lot of wetlands, we have lakes, we have creeks. We are responsible for enforcing the Wetland Conservation Act, which is a state law. And it really helps protect the wetland plant communities in our community. You may not know, but wetlands are the only habitat type that is actually protected by law. And so that's important that we are enforcing that. We also work with our engineering staff in ensuring that we are meeting the standards set forth in the state municipal stormwater permit, which is also lovingly referred to as the MS4 permit. Really, our portion of that is focused on water quality protection, so we want to make sure the water that's going downstream into our ponds and our lakes and our creeks is clean. We also coordinate with those watershed organizations quite a bit that I mentioned. We have the Minnehaha Creek, we have the Bassett Creek, 9 Mile Creek, and the Riley Purgatory Bluff Creek watershed organizations. So we regularly partner with them in education events, also sometimes permit review, and also project development. And then we also help manage all of the green infrastructure practices. So these are, think of a rain garden type practice that's meant to improve water quality, but also has plants and soil, and we want to make sure that they're functioning. So we actually help maintain those in parks and public areas. Education and engagement, that's another really important piece that's growing for us. You may be familiar with the Resilient Minnetonka program. This is a program that offers education and technical assistance and some incentives for property owners to actually take action on their own land and adopt more sustainable landscaping practices. I know you're familiar with the Mayor's Monarch Pledge. We continue to be a Monarch Champion city, which is we're one of the few in the country, and that means we've achieved a lot of goals related to monarch protection, but also that extends into pollinator protection in general. Volunteer program management, I mentioned some of the work that we're doing there. That continues to grow. We have habitat stewards, we have wildlife stewards, we now have tree stewards, which is a program we're partnering with the University of Minnesota on. So that's really exciting. We have education campaigns that we implement, so Pollinator Awareness Month, pet waste reduction, adopt-a-drain, smart salting. These are just examples of some of the campaigns that we actually advocate for. We develop outreach materials. We're starting to develop bilingual materials that we can hand out at the farmers market, the open house, and other areas where we're tabling. And then we have different communication channels. So the Minnetonka Memo, we have a natural resources e-blast. If you want to sign up, if you don't get that, you certainly can talk to me afterwards about signing up for that. And then we have obviously our website and Minnetonka Matters. So these are some of the channels that we use to communicate with the public. Just real briefly, I want to talk a little bit about governance. So sort of what kind of shapes what we do. I mentioned the Natural Resources Master Plan, but also we also refer to the Parks and Open Space and Trail Plan. We refer to and are guided by the MS4 permit, that municipal permit, stormwater permit I mentioned. The newly adopted Climate Adaptation and Action Plan will be a guiding document for us as well. There's council policies that we adhere to, the plant pest policy, which is really about tree diseases, lake and pond policy, which really helps us as we work with lake associations and lake management issues. Obviously zoning ordinances, I mentioned wetland, tree protection, shoreland, park regulations, and then nuisance ordinances we get involved in as well. So the primary body that we report to on a lot of the work we do is the park board. They provide guidance and then recommendations, and some of those things get elevated to the council as well. Lastly, just some current initiatives that we're working on now and will be in the next year or so. So I mentioned these park habitat restoration plans and projects that are coming out of them that's really tied to the CIP that you adopt every year. And so every year we're developing more of these plans that are guiding the restoration efforts in our parks. We are also currently working on a community forest management plan. This is an output of the Natural Resources Master Plan. It was identified as a high priority need. And so that will be coming to you probably this fall. And we've done some community engagement. We've done some internal staff engagement around this plan. We're just starting to develop some goals and strategies. The Community Relief Grant Program is a grant that we received from the DNR. It's over $300,000, and you may have heard of this. We'll be implementing it probably starting July 1st, I believe. And that's really, it's grant funds to help property owners sort of manage the loss of EAB. So if you have a lot of trees, if you meet the eligibility requirements, then you can tap into these grants. So there'll be more information coming out in the Minnetonka Memo and the website and things like that. Resilient Minnetonka and volunteer programming, we're continuing to try to find new audiences and expand the reach of those programs. We're starting to embrace GIS, which is Geographic Information Systems and mapping, and really think about the resources we have in terms of asset management. And then we are also now starting to develop some strategic marketing planning or communication planning. We will have a survey actually being made available to the public, and we'd love to have council members participate too, and it can help us overall develop a more strategic marketing plan for the work that we do. And lastly, I just wanted to add, we are always happy to take council members out on site visits if you want to see a project or get to know something that's happening in our parks. We're always happy to make staff available for that and take you out there. So with that, that is all I have. I appreciate the time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
All right. Well, thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Ms. Yetka. And Council, any questions on our natural resources capabilities? I have to have a question. So, you know, I brag a lot about our city, and I've been talking about us having a 58% tree cover, and now I see that it's 45 to 53. I mean, you know, this is that's probably going to keep me awake tonight. But when I'm bragging about our city, what number should I use?
So that's a very good question. I meant to actually say something because I had a feeling you might be thinking that. And as we're developing in the community forest management plan and we're working with a city municipal forester consultant, we're finding that there's a lot of different sources and they all say different things. So if you look at different analysis methods, like a statistical analysis is more about 45%. If you look at the Met Council's Growing Shade program, which is a mapping, they've mapped communities throughout the Met Council's region. We're at 53%, and I know 58 was from a study, I think that was conducted years ago by the city of Burnsville, funny enough. So there's a range.
Okay.
And I don't know that there's one answer because it
There's
depends
probably
on
not.
It depends on the method that you use, but somewhere around 45, 58. I should have said 58 on there. I apologize.
But it's okay.
I don't want you to lose sleep.
Well, it's okay. I mean, I'll get over it. So, Council, any other questions? Well, thank you very much. You know, it is cool. I mean, the fact that we have as large a natural resources staff as we do allows us to talk about natural resources, and we kind of put our money where our mouth is. We have the staff and we put the work in, and so it's not just lip service to something that everybody likes. And I think that's really important. So thank you for your good work and for your team's good work.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So there's no action to take on that, so we will move on to the next special matter, and that is the swearing in for Fire Chief Kevin Fox. And I will turn that over to Mike, and I think Corrine will give him some help on that too.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to excuse myself from the dais and join you at the podium along with Chief Fox.
I'll be there too. Chief Fox, and very good.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Again, can you hear me? Are these on? Okay, good. Thank you. Well, this is an exciting moment, I know, obviously, for Chief Fox and his family, but also for myself as city manager and for our city. I think the last time that we were in front of you as a staff swearing in an oath of office for our fire chief was over 10 years ago. So it's something that doesn't happen very often, but it's very exciting when we do it. Just to give you a little bit of background on Chief Fox and a little bit about our process, and it really starts with our search. And we did a really thorough and extensive search and interview process. And I think Mr. Fox can attest to it was not an easy process. He was appointed then on April 19th, 2024. And he was appointed by myself as city manager, and as city manager, that's my authority here at the city to appoint our department directors. And tonight we're here to celebrate the official swearing in of Chief Fox. He began his career as a paid on-call firefighter in 1994. And I would say his skills and expertise shone highly throughout the interview process and are exactly what the department needs to handle the evolving challenges and opportunities that we see in the fire and EMS fields. I have full confidence in Mr. Fox's ability to lead the department to greater heights of service and effectiveness. As you know, Council, the Minnetonka Fire Department is currently implementing its new public safety master plan, which includes adding additional career firefighting staff and increasing station staffing during peak hours. Last year alone, the department responded to over a record 5,700 calls for service and participated in over 8,600 hours of training. So I think that really just signifies the leadership that is needed to run a really significant operation here in the city. Throughout his career, Mr. Fox has held various roles within the department, including captain of the maintenance division and fire marshal. He also became the deputy chief of operations in 2011, and most recently served as interim chief following the retirement of John Vance earlier this year. So we're really excited to do the swearing in and oath of office for Chief Fox, and I would welcome City Attorney Corrine Heine to administer the oath, after which I assume Mr. Fox may have a few words.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Funk.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kevin Fox, do solemnly swear
I, Kevin Fox, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
the duties of Fire Chief of the City of Minnetonka
the duties of Fire Chief of the City of Minnetonka
in the County of Hennepin,
in the County of Hennepin,
to which I have been duly appointed,
to which I have been duly appointed,
to the best of my judgment and ability, so help me God.
to the best of my judgment and ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mayor and Council, the hardest part of this is now the pinning of the badge. And Chief Fox has asked his wife Sandy to come forward to pin the badge. So Sandy.
It's up to you.
Thanks again. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's with great pride and humility that I stand before you tonight honored to accept the role of Fire Chief for the City of Minnetonka. The badge, which I now wear with great respect, symbolizes not only a personal achievement, but also a commitment to our community and to those who serve it. As Fire Chief, my mission is clear: to ensure the safety and the well-being of our citizens, to lead with integrity, and to foster an environment where our firefighters can thrive and excel. Together, we will face the challenges ahead with resilience and innovation, always putting service before self. I'm grateful to the City Council and City Manager Mike Funk for your confidence in me, to my family for their support, and to our firefighters for the continued dedication to our shared mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Get out of your way now.
Well, thanks for being here. All right, and we are still doing special matters, and we have another significant special matter, and that is the retirement recognition for Sergeant Steve Niss. So welcome Sergeant Niss, and I guess you can sit there and I'll read this and then come up, and we've got a presentation that we want to make, and I printed this off today in the large print version so I wouldn't need my glasses, so we'll be good. So Sergeant Steve Niss has been dedicated to serving the City of Minnetonka for over 40 years. But his ties to the city trace back even further. In 1975, Steve's father, Mike Niss, was hired as a Minnetonka police officer, where he worked until his retirement in 1991. Inspired by his father, in 1983, at the age of 14, Steve joined the Minnetonka Police Explorers. He remained active in the program while he pursued his degree in law enforcement. In 1993, 2 years after his father's retirement, Steve officially joined the Minnetonka Police Department as a sworn officer. Starting out in patrol, Steve responded to calls, enforced traffic laws, and managed criminal incidents. His talent for the job quickly shined through, and in a few short years, he became a field training officer, guiding, instructing, and shaping new recruits. Over the next several years, Steve took on various other roles, including serving on the SWAT team, instructing other officers in the use of force, firearms, and tasers, and worked as a school resource officer at Hopkins High School. In 2000, his peers, recognizing his unwavering dedication, positive attitude, and commitment, nominated him for the Glen Lake Optimus Officer of the Year Award. In 2001, Steve ascended to the rank of sergeant, where he assumed responsibilities such as supervising patrol shifts and leading as the SWAT commander. Additionally, Steve spent many years working as the administrative sergeant, where he oversaw squad maintenance, handled the scheduling for the department, and supervised the community service and traffic officers. Steve also took a pivotal role in handling the city's deer management program and as an advisor for the Explorer program. Steve's career highlights include his invitation to the 249th session of the FBI National Academy at Quantico, Virginia in 2012. Attendance at this esteemed academies extended only to the top 1% of law enforcement professionals, reinforcing Steve's exceptional dedication and service. As Steve bids farewell to his remarkable career, the NISS legacy perseveres. In 2023, his daughter Becca joined the Minnetonka Police Department as a police officer, carrying forward the NISS family tradition. We extend our deepest gratitude to Sergeant Niss for 4 decades of dedicated service to the city of Minnetonka. His profound impact on the department, the city, and the community is immeasurable, and he will be sincerely missed. May your retirement be filled with well-deserved relaxation, enriching experiences, and endless joy. Congratulations, Sergeant Niss. Small presentation to make, so this is just a small token. It's a beautiful picture of Minnetonka, and on the back it says this wood was reclaimed from a majestic American elm tree at Minnetonka Mills Park.
Thank you.
Congratulations, and
Appreciate it.
you know, I want to thank you for a couple of things. One, your great service to the city, but the legacy that your family represents in this city and throughout the state. Congratulations to all the Nisses and your commitment to law enforcement. It's a tremendous tremendous commitment that has existed through your family, and I'm very appreciative.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And then now the microphone's yours.
All right. Well, I'll take you up on that for 20 or 30 minutes. Mayor Wearsome, members of the council, thank you for the recognition tonight. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. First of all, I'd like to introduce some really important people in my life that made the trek here tonight. First of all, my wife Angela of 32 years. She's kept the wheels on through night shift and holidays and weekends and schedules that are far from normal. And I appreciate her for that. My son Ryan is with us. My daughter Rachel is with us. And Minnetonka's, one of Minnetonka's finest is right here, Becca. And I'm certainly proud of them beyond belief. My son-in-law Ethan is here with us. And Sam, my soon-to-be son-in-law, is sitting right there. So it's great to have them here. I'm super proud of my kids and the fact that my girls have also chosen a career in public safety. Lucky for Minnetonka in hiring another NISS, and I assure you they're just getting better. The fact that they have chosen to get married to fellow cops just ensures that I will probably never have a normal holiday as long as I live. I went on a ride-along here with my dad when I was 14 years old, and I can still remember the calls that we went on. And from that day on, I knew exactly what I wanted. I joined our Explorer post, as the mayor mentioned, and I spent 7 years in that volunteer capacity. And from that point, I was blessed and lucky enough to get hired here in 1993. I've spent my entire career here in Minnetonka. I fly the flag here for Minnetonka. I always have and I always will. Thank you, council members. and City Manager Mike Funk for your ongoing support. It does not go unnoticed. We see it and we feel it. Thank you. Finally, I want to thank my partners. This is where help shake up. My partners, the men and women of the Minnetonka Police Department. You've helped me, help bring me home for over 30 years, and I continue to be in awe with your professionalism, your heroism, and how you represent our city. I continue to pray for your safe travels. I appreciate you, and thank you all. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for being here, and to all of our public safety people who came here today, and to recognize both Chief Fox and Sergeant Niss. Your work is so important in our community, and we very, very much appreciate it. So, thank you all. All right. Next item on the agenda is reports from city manager and council members. Mr. Funk.
Again, thank you, Mayor, City Council. Good evening. I have a couple things for you this evening. First off, really what I'm going to speak to is, it's springtime, we're rolling into summer, and a lot of exciting programming and opportunities for residents coming up. One of those is a service that's provided to residents 60 years or older, or have residents with mobility issues. Our Minnetonka Fire Department and our firefighters can go to your house or come to those homes and install new working smoke alarms. Alarms are provided at no cost, thanks to a gracious donation from the American Red Cross. And so if anyone is listening to this message here this evening, certainly contact our fire department, and we'll be happy to come out and make that install. This last Saturday, we did have our drop-off day that was held at Public Works. We had a really great turnout, as usual, and so we really want to thank our staff that was available this last Saturday, and for residents to taking advantage of a really great service. Farmers Market begins its new summer season on June 4th, so that's just right around the corner. And that is tomorrow, so it is really right around the corner. Which is tomorrow, Tuesdays throughout the summer from 2 to 6 o'clock p.m. Also, in the sense of opening, Shady Oak Beach is scheduled to open on June 8th, so that is also right around the corner. The Burwell House also is opening, and summer tours begin on June 1st. And then two more items worth noting is, even though it's August 6th, Night to Unite, we do have, we start that process of working with neighborhoods, so any neighborhood that is interested in participating in our annual Minnetonka Night to Unite 24 to contact the Minnetonka Police Department, or you can go to our website. We are gearing up for that on August 6th. It's hard to say August when we're not even in June, but we do some planning months in advance. And then last, I just want to mention that on Friday, Summerfest is coming up Saturday, June 22nd. So we do not have a council meeting between now and June 22nd. So I just want to make a moment here and announce that Summerfest is on that Saturday. As many folks know, we have inflatables, sports challenges, climbing walls scheduled, water wars. I'm not sure what that's about. Perhaps we'll get the mayor involved. The Tot Trot pickleball tournament this year, as we had from last year, food trucks, live entertainment, and of course fireworks concluding it all. So hope to see great participation from our community this year, coming up again on June 22nd. So with that, Mayor and Council, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Funk, and council members. Anything to report? Councilmember Calvert.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge our police department. I couldn't help but notice the black ribbon across their badges in honor of the terrible killing of Officer Jamal Mitchell, and a civilian also perished in Minneapolis. And I'm thankful for their work every day. And I'm the wife of a career wildland firefighter and emergency manager, and you always have in the back of your mind that you might get that phone call or visit from a colleague with terrible news. And a family did get that terrible news a few days ago. So to see Sergeant Niss and his entire family willing to put themselves out there, it is humbling, and I'm so grateful. And I just also wanted to say for the people that are here, especially those that live in Minnetonka, the collaboration between our fire department that just got a wonderful new chief and the police department with our wonderful chief, Borboom, is the envy of the entire state. Not every city is so lucky to have first responders that have such a wonderful relationship. And so I'm so grateful to Chief Borboom and Chief Fox for their wonderful work. And I know that our fire department is in great hands with a very creative, collaborative, compassionate, and also very funny new fire chief. So, and I also just wanted to remark, and I know that Ms. Yetka isn't here, but it's yet another example of the incredible professionalism of our staff, that she has 2 master's degrees because she wants to be an excellent public service. And you look at the long list of policies and plans that, you know, they have to implement, and all of the different kinds of work that they do. I just wanted to express my gratitude, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilor Calvert. Councilmember Romali.
Picking up on that theme, I wanted to report that I attended the electric lawn event or lawn equipment event last Thursday. That was put together by one of Leslie Yetka's AmeriCorps interns, Kessa Andrews. They did a great job. I want to thank them for putting that together. Looking forward to seeing more such events as we roll out our climate action and adaptation plan. And also the participants, including Ward 3 True Value owner Rory Van Held, for bringing in electric lawnmowers and leaf blowers and all sorts of other things for folks to try. So again, thanks to the Natural Resources staff and the AmeriCorps member, Kessa Andrew, who put that together, and just encourage everybody to really consider, electric lawn equipment. I recently wrote a note to constituents saying that I've had an electric lawnmower for several years now, 5 or 6 years now, and it is so much better than a gas-powered, as is our leaf blower and stuff. So the equipment only continues to improve, and it's so much better for our environment. It's so much better for our neighbors in terms of what they have to listen to in terms of the yard noise we've produced. So again, kudos and encouragement to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Romali. Councilmember Foster Bolton.
I just wanted to mention, kind of along the same lines, last weekend, Saturday, I got to the end of a run, and I was at Meadow Park, and I saw people coming out of cars with their little yellow Friends of the Minnetonka Parks. And I decided to join them because they were on the picking garlic mustard. And it was a great experience. They were so nice. I hadn't signed up, but they had everything ready for me, and gloves and a jacket. And I told them right away, because my husband is a big native plant guy, and he's always trying to get me to help, and I can always say, well, I don't know anything about this kind of stuff. And I said to them right away, I don't know anything about garlic mustard. I'm going to pull everything. And now, so I worked with them for an hour. Now I go around Minnetonka like, there's garlic mustard. I'm going to pick some. I feel way smarter. But just how welcoming they were and how informative they were. And I'm sure everybody here has done this before, but I hadn't. So it was very exciting. And, they say to sign up for 2.5, 3 hours. But really, I only was there for an hour, and I got to leave. And it felt really good. So Friends of the Minnetonka Parks, it was great. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Coakley.
Thank you, Mayor. I need to talk about something that's not as fun and exciting, but I want to talk about some things that's been happening in Minnetonka the last week. So I know you all warned me not to go next door, but I did. I received an email, and you know, I responded to a resident email about what they saw next door about me, and that's fine. I can handle things. I have tough skin, but what I really want to talk about is when a resident called me and say that they're walking down the street in our city with some little kids, and this was a black woman with some black African-American children, and they get called the N-word. This woman was in my ward, and she explained to me how she felt, and it was really saddened to me. She's only been in this city for probably about 15 months, and she has experienced this, and she experienced this with little children. Now, after she told me this weekend, another woman called me from Bloomington who talked to me about what she saw on Nextdoor. I gave her, in Nextdoor, I posted my number and said, if you feel like you're not getting a response through email, you can always give me a call. This is what I tell folks all the time. So if they don't call me, then they probably don't want to talk. This is what I explained to this woman who called me in Bloomington, from Bloomington. She said, I just want to call to see if you would answer your phone so that I can go back and tell the folks that's saying all this nasty stuff in this Nextdoor that you actually do answer your call, and you had a very lovely conversation, and we talked about 30 minutes to 35 minutes. And I can tell you I've had several calls in the last weekend about Purgatory Park, as well as parking, and spent 35 to 40 minutes on those calls. Now, if I was working a full-time job, I know I would not be able to answer those calls the way I've been doing for the last 4.5 years. And so, as far as the emails, I'll say it again. We get a lot of marketing emails. We get a lot of spam emails. We get a lot of emails. You couldn't pay me enough money to make me answer every single email, and I'm not going to do it. I'll answer the emails for the residents as much as I can. But if I don't answer your email, you can always give me a call, and I will definitely take your call. But this is not a full-time job. It is part-time, and I love talking to people, and I'm very open, and I even meet folks at their homes, and I'm willing to do that. But we get lots of emails, and a lot of them is junk emails, and I'll say it again, I do not answer every email that I receive. So that part is over with, so I don't have to discuss it anymore. And I just want our residents to know, when I ran because of some of these type of things. When I talk about inclusiveness, I talk about it because we are becoming more diverse in our city. There's going to be people who don't have the same belief, don't have the same religion, don't have the same skin color. I mean, all kinds of things, and disabilities, abilities, even the dog park. Folks who like dogs, folks who don't like dogs, folks who want dogs off leash, folks who want dogs on leash. This is about being inclusive. I just want our city to know, as we continue to do this work in our city, staff and city council, police, we're all doing our work. We're all doing the work that we can. We're doing our very best, and we're going to continue to do our very best. But this is why we need to really continue to talk about inclusiveness, because it's no woman, no children in our city should have to hear someone calling them the N-word, and no one should be calling me from Bloomington trying to defend me against residents in our city. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Coakley. Is there anyone else? Council members? I've got a few things, and one of them is very related to what Councilmember Coakley just talked about. So a couple of weeks back, we went to the Hennepin County multi-day program on public safety. And at our table, I talked to a woman who is with ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, and she emailed me after that meeting and said that I'm bringing together people from the Anti-Defamation League, and I'd like to get some mayors together. Would you be interested in meeting with us? And I said that I would, and I was joined by Edina Mayor Jim Hovland, and we had a very informative meeting. There were two representatives of the Anti-Defamation League. One was a regional administrator, and one was a national administrator, and I didn't know much about the Anti-Defamation League, but clearly the rise of hatred and the rise of anti-Semitism in our society it's well known, and so this was a very informative meeting for me, and the thing that I learned, Anti-Defamation League was started in 1913, and it is the longest standing anti-hate organization in the country. And they also do training for police departments, and I believe the local individual told me that over half of Minnetonka police officers have had anti-bias and anti-hate training. And you know, hatred has no place in our society and in our city. And we talk about being welcoming and inclusive, but as Councilmember Coakley just said, not everybody in our city is welcoming and inclusive. And so we need to let people know that we don't stand for this type of behavior, and we defend our residents who face this type of behavior because there is no excuse for it. So that was a very, very interesting, productive, and helpful meeting. But you know, it's really, really important that I think we as, I want to talk to Mr. Funk about, you know, things that we can do to broaden awareness of some of these anti-hate activities that can occur, because, you know, I like to say Minnetonka is a very safe city, but we're not a crime-free city. And I do believe we're a very inclusive city, but we are not a hate-free city. And so we all have work to do. And so I don't have anything, I just want to make people aware of that because I found that to be productive and interesting. And, you know, I mean, as Councilmember Coakley said, we have an increasingly diverse community, and people are welcome here. Everyone is welcome in our community, and but not everybody feels that way. And so we have to stand up and be good examples and demonstrate how to treat people. And it's not just treat people who look like me, it's people who don't look like me, who are different. Not that, trust me, not everyone wants to look like me, but you know, we really have to recognize that we have to be welcoming and inclusive to people who are different than we are, because that makes us stronger and that makes us a community, and I really believe it's important. So I wanted to share that with you. The other thing I wanted to do is I reached out to Mayor Fry, and I wanted to extend my deepest condolences to Mayor Fry, to Minneapolis Police, and you know, to the family of Officer Jamal Mitchell. You know, we're getting tired of seeing police officers and public safety officials with black bands across their shields. There is too much violence in our society, and you know, we really, I mean, the situation in Minnetonka is a lot different than Minneapolis, but we're all in this together. And it really is disturbing when we hear about a police officer losing his life in the line of duty. And so I just wanted to comment on that because it's important for our police officers and our firefighters to know that they have our support. And we have to recognize these horrible incidents for what they are and stand together with the public safety people and personnel who make us all safe. So I wanted to make that last comment. And then one other interesting thing, a totally different topic, well, two others. One is I'm part of the Regional Council of Mayors, and we had a meeting today at Microsoft in Edina, and the topic was AI, artificial intelligence. And that was very fascinating. I wrote them a thank you note and said, I learned a lot, I think, because it's a complex, challenging topic, but it's one that's affecting all of us, whether we like it or not. And so it was very worthwhile, and Microsoft is a very interesting, technologically savvy company, and it was just something that I really enjoyed. And I'm hoping that we can perhaps work with Microsoft more to expose more of our staff and our council to the technologies that they shared. And then finally, I want to comment one other thing. This week, Ms. Wishnak and Mr. Funk and I attended the Minnetonka Business Council in cooperation with the Wayzata Chamber of Commerce, and there was a good showing there. I got to know some business people in our community that I didn't know before, and those are great opportunities, networking opportunities, and it was just a very worthwhile program. And Ms. Wishnak shared about some of the work that we're doing in Minnetonka. So that was a very, very nice thing. And they have, what are they, quarterly meetings, and that the Wayzata Chamber of Commerce puts on. So that's what I've got. So anyone else before I move on? All right, thank you for that. So that takes us to citizens wishing to discuss matters not on the agenda. So that is an open mic opportunity, and if there is something that you would like to make the council aware of, please come forward and state your name and address. It has to be something that is not on our agenda this evening. There will be other opportunities for public comment on other topics as we get to them on the agenda. So is there anyone? Please come forward. And please state your name and address and tell us what you want us to know.
Yeah, my name is Steve Lyon, and I live at 15237 Lynn Terrace. And I want to let you know that it's very important that you do get back to people. And I had something to do with what we experienced with Councilman Coakley. When she replies to an email, she says she will get back to you in 2 weeks, okay? And we have worked with her, tried to work with her on a very important issue you'll hear about from me later concerning the on-street parking. But the essence is we had a home on our block at 14819 Cherry Lane that really was, and I think probably every city or every ward has a home you might consider an eyesore. And no one ever got back to us, and we took the liberty to speak to the city itself, and we found out that there's very little the city could even do. And it kind of goes to the later issue, but the city, this particular home, and it's fixed now, I think they sold it, but it was with us for years. And it had vehicles all over the actual property itself. And I think everybody in the neighborhood was frustrated. The realtors trying to sell homes were frustrated. And, you know, if we could talk to a council person about it, that's helpful, okay? And so just wanted to know how important it is that you have that communication. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Kevin Ringhofer. I live at 2200 Indian Road West in Minnetonka. And I wanted to say thank you to the council for the approval of the Mills Church Habitat Project a month ago. We appreciate that. That extends to the staff and the work that they did in terms of helping that project get approved and some of the adjustments that we needed to make at the end. And thank Habitat for Humanity for their part and also helping to kind of make those adjustments. There were faith communities that came together, the Minnetonka Community Housing Team, Love Makes Room, and so I think there's a lot of thank yous to go around. I gathered by some of the comments that there were some bumps along the way during the process. I'll say a little bit about that in a minute, but I think the big thing is that we have a project. We have 10 affordable homes that are going to be coming to Minnetonka where families can live. And that's the big picture thing that I wanted to keep in mind. But I do also want to add is there were some problems with the process. I said this may be a good time to look at some of the processes for getting affordable housing like this approved. You know, is there something that we can do to kind of make it go a little smoother and not experience some of the things that some people experience? And I don't understand what everybody experienced. I'm not on social media, so I don't see a lot of that. And I can only guess at a couple other things that happened. But I think probably some conversations about that while there isn't a project going on might be wise. I spoke to the council a couple months ago about the need to kind of make this path for affordable housing, to make it somewhat smoother, to make it more like some of the things that I saw, like the Woodhaven project, where it's a project on a half acre, they're going to be half acre lots, and that seems to be very straightforward and very smooth. It'd be nice to work towards that for affordable housing. There's a coalition, I think, that has come together. I think you saw that there were a lot of people who are in favor of affordable housing in Minnetonka. It's not only Mills Church, but there are a lot of other faith communities that were very supportive of it. Supportive, love makes room. There's just, I think, a coalition that's very strong. I've heard that it's very unusual to have where you have the number of people who are supporting an affordable housing project outnumber the people who are against it. Usually the neighbors come out more, and I think at both the Planning Commission and the City Council meeting, that wasn't the case. I think we had a lot of people who spoke in favor of the project and who were here in favor of the project. So I just think, yeah, it's time to consider, are there some things that we can do to move forward, to make it less, whatever it was that happened in terms of the last process, and maybe avoid some of that. But the big part is, I think, there's a congratulations that's in order to the council, to the staff, to Habitat, and to everyone else involved, the advocates, and to the city of Minnetonka, for their being able now to look forward to 12 new affordable homes with the Mills Church project and Roland Road that will have families in it soon. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Ringhofer. Good evening. Welcome.
Heather Holm, 15327 Lakeshore Avenue. I just wanted to extend an invitation to the council and any community members listening. The Friends of Minnetonka Parks is having their annual education and social event next Wednesday, June 12th in the evening downstairs in the Minnetonka Community Room. And we will have a featured speaker, Joe Walton, who is the senior ecologist for Dakota County Parks, and he's going to present on some of the park restoration that they're doing in Dakota County, including some bison reintroductions. So if anyone listening would like to come and join us at the event, they can visit the Friends of Minnetonka Parks website, mtkaparks.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holm. And I want to just add, thank you for, as Councilmember Foster Bolton indicated, thank you for all the good work that you're doing in our parks, and it's very much appreciated. Is there anyone else? All right, then we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. And that is bids and purchases, and we have none of those tonight. So next item is the consent agenda, and we have one item on that. In 10A is an interim use permit for a coffee trailer at Westdale Floral and Home and Garden at 15310 Minnetonka Boulevard. Is there anyone who would like to make that motion or comment? Or?
I will make the motion and a comment. Oh,
very good, Councilman.
Sorry, Councilman Dershak. Since it's in Ward 3, I wanted to congratulate and heartily support this. And we're in Ward 3 lucky to have two lovely establishments where you can buy and purchase gardening materials, and this is one of them. The other one's Tonkadale, of course, and so I heartily approve this, and I'm very glad to see this coming about. So thank you.
Councilor Shack?
Was that
That was a motion, correct?
Okay. Yes, that was I'll second the motion.
All right, we've got a motion by Councilor Romali and a second by Councilmember Shack. Ms. Englund, please call roll.
Romali,
Yes.
Coakley,
Yes.
Foster Bolton,
Yes.
Shack,
Yes.
Wilburn,
Yes.
Calvert,
Yes.
Wearsome.
Yes, motion carries. Item 11 is the consent agenda items requiring 5 votes, and we have none of those tonight. And so item 12 is introduction of ordinances. We also have none of those. Item 13 is public hearings, and 13A is a temporary on-sale liquor license for Bremick LLC doing business as Boom Island Brewing Company at 5959 Baker Road. And Ms. Wishnack.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. This is a 2-day outdoor event at Boom Island Brewing on Baker Road. The brewery has been doing the Boom Island Days for 13 years, but they've only been in Minnetonka since 2019. So it's only been a number of years since they've done it in Minnetonka. We have not had challenges in the past. They have provided appropriate security as well as checking of IDs for age. And so staff is recommending holding the public hearing and approving the license. Thank you if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Wishnak. Council, any questions for staff? All right, then I will open the public hearing and ask if anyone wants to comment on this item. And if the applicant's here, you're welcome to come forward. You're not required to, but you're welcome to come forward. Please state your name and address.
Good evening, Council. Mr. Mayor, I'm Casey McCauley, owner of Boom Island Brewing. I live at 3892 Whitetail Drive in Shakopee, Minnesota, and we're happy to have this before you here tonight for consideration. Like Ms. Wishnak said, this is our 13th Boom Days that we'll be celebrating, the fourth one here in Minnetonka, and this year we're going to try and make it bigger and better than ever before. We have 5 bands slated to play during the weekend, a whole bunch of special beverages that'll just be on sale for this weekend only. We'll have 3 food trucks each night available, which will be switching Friday to Saturday. We have a late night DJ that will be playing on Friday as well inside the building, so there's no noise concerns about that. And we have a number of carnival games that we're bringing in. And yeah, it should be slated to be a great time, and I hope to see some of you there. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Great. Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Would anyone else like to comment on this item? All right. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and I will bring it back to the council for comments or a motion. Councilmember Calvert.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very pleased to move to grant the license to Bremick LLC, Boom Island Brewing Company.
Councilor Shack.
I'll second.
All right. Got a motion by Councilmember Calvert and a second by Councilmember Shack. Any last comments, council? Otherwise, Ms. Englund, please call roll.
Romaili,
Yes, and see you there.
Coakley,
Yes.
Foster Bolton,
Yes.
Shack,
Yes.
Wilburn,
Yes.
Calvert,
Yes.
Wearsome.
Yes, motion carries. Item 14 is other business, and we have several items, the first of which is the Purgatory Park Master Plan, and I believe Mr. Kumka is making that report. So welcome, and please take it away.
Thank you very much, Mayor, Council. Thanks for the opportunity tonight to talk to you about the Purgatory Park Master Plan. I was fortunate enough about 10 years ago to move to Minnetonka, and I'm in walking distance of the park, and it's one of my favorite spots. My boys run in the park, and it's really quite the gem. So I was fortunate enough to work on potential for improving that park. So I will present tonight a little bit of a background on the process, how we got to this point. I will walk through a summary of the feedback that we solicited from residents and what we generally heard, and then I will talk through, in brief, a series of recommendations to come out of this master plan process, and finally open it up for comments and questions. So a little bit of a background. Park master planning throughout the city was identified as a goal in the Parks, Open Space, and Trails Plan. This lays out a process of about 15 to 20 years of a roadmap for planning and implementing potential park improvements. The plan in Purgatory is to help Park Board, City Council, and staff prioritize park improvements and ensure that changes and investments to our parks continue to serve the needs of the entire community. We started this process back in 2023, early 2023. We hired consultants from engineering firm Bolton & Mank. We worked with their professionals, landscape architects, park planners, community engagement professionals. We developed a communications plan. We looked to highlight areas of interest for potential park improvements, and we began the process of collecting feedback from park users and citywide residents. The outreach and engagement was fairly widespread. These included in-person open house events, pop-up events in the parks where we had staff and consultants walking and talking to people in the park. We had a Minnetonka Matters website page for about a year now. We had a variety of surveys related to the user, how folks use the park, generally speaking, and a comment page and guest book. So the Purgatory Park Master Plan had a variety of considerations in it. So I will present tonight the sections in the master plan that focus on the general park use analysis that we found through this process of engagement and outreach, and the areas of potential improvement that include our recommendations. So those would include a general introduction to the plan itself, an overview of the inventory analysis and community engagement. I will talk through this idea of sense of place, which I'll get into a little bit more. This concept of park access, both pedestrian, bike, trails, and vehicular parking. I will talk through the Red Barn site. I'll have a picture of this. This is Red Barn on Excelsior. It's a parcel adjacent to the overall park, but it's in consideration as part of this master plan. I will talk through general design standards. These would include trails, for instance, width and maintenance strategies for trails. And finally, I'll end on dogs in the park, dogs being a highly utilized amenity in the park. A lot of folks go to the park for dogs. So a little bit briefly into the inventory and analysis process. We look to, early on in the process, sort of document current park conditions through a series of field visits and meetings with staff, forestry folks, public works folks, parks maintenance people. What are they seeing in the park? What takes us a lot to maintain? What are bright spots in the park? Sort of to lay out the roadmap for engagement. We reviewed reference documents. These would be the post plan that I referenced earlier and the Natural Resources Master Plan that Ms. Yetka commented on earlier, to make sure that those plans were in the back of our minds as we prepared this master plan document. And then we identified priority areas of focus, those being what the park's used for most consistently. So through the community engagement, we received well over 600 survey responses initially when we asked folks what they used the park for. We hosted 6 in-person engagement events, one being at Unmapped Brewing, one in the community center here. We received well over 1,000 written comments. We hosted that Minnetonka Matters page, and it was quite engaged with. We had signs in the park for well over 3 months, signs that pointed people with a QR code to our Minnetonka Matters page to engage with the process. And like I mentioned, we received quite a bit of writing comments. The draft master plan was made available to the public after the last park board meeting in May. This was available for 30 days for public review. Minnetonka Matters, we recorded comments in a variety of ways related to the draft master plan that we presented. There was a guest book and responses to general survey questions in the effort to get responses from folks what they thought of the draft master plan. We received 76 resident survey question responses to the plan feedback, 13,000 unique page views, and 39 mapping tool submissions. So quite a bit of engagement. Overall, what we found is Purgatory Park has very regular park users. So 67% of the folks that we surveyed visit the park at least once a week. That's quite a high number. So local residents are using the park most often. There are also numerous out-of-the-city park users, and the park is pointed to by locals as sort of a word-of-mouth destination, being as special as it is. So overall, regular park users tend to be fairly close by to the park. But with that said, most users drive and park at the main parking lot that's just off of Excelsior Boulevard. So what we found was 54% of people drove 2 to 5 miles, generally speaking. Most frequently used park accesses were that primary entrance off Excelsior, with the Stadola Road on the east side being the second most used. So what we found is most people go to the park to walk the trails. Purgatory Park has beautiful trails through a variety of ecosystems. There's prairie, there's woodland, there's wetlands. Most people go to the park to use it for the trails. We do see quite a bit of leashed and off-leash dog usage in the park. Folks generally responded that that's one of their main reasons for going to the park. What we heard is park maintenance is generally adequate. During COVID, we saw an increase of foot traffic, so that leads to some trail erosion and some trash not being timely picked up, but our park staff do their best to keep up with that, and we heard feedback to that effect. Park amenities that we heard need a bit of a refresh would include benches throughout the park, sometimes not sited in exactly the right locations. The interpretive signage in the park related to some restoration efforts is a bit outdated. There's certainly very outdated wayfinding in the park, and the park rules are generally out of date. A little showcase of what our engagement events look like. Community open house event, walking around in the park and finally collecting pop-up board post-it results. I believe that one was at Unmet Brewing. So people were quite engaged. So a little bit about sense of place. So what we heard from the folks in the community is that they are interested in reinforcing Purgatory's Park, the beauty, the natural beauty of the park, and the recreational opportunities it currently offers them. This would further, we look to the opportunity to experience solitude and walk amongst nature in the park. Folks were interested in supporting the use of the park for exercising, the walking, jogging, bike riding, those passive recreational opportunities that we look for in our park systems. We would like to support the park as a community gathering space. We heard from a lot of folks that the park is where they see their neighbors. It's where they chit-chat with folks as they watch their dogs run around. So dog walkers, birders, and natural resources volunteers are the folks that really view the park as a community gathering space. So this master plan would seek to reinforce that. And finally, to protect and reinforce the natural resources, the natural resources of Purgatory Park really being the defining sense of place of the park and the experience of the folks that go there. So in terms of recommendation for the sense of place, we would look to adopt design standards related to the park materials and construction detailing. This would include interpretive signage strategy that would highlight restoration efforts, would highlight unique features of the park, and those would be done in a tasteful way, not to clutter the park, but do it appropriately in terms of placement and messaging of those interpretive features. We would look to enhance those special places in the park. There is an old trolley line on the north side that a lot of folks don't know about. There are some significant overlooks in the park. As we perform more and more restoration throughout the park, we're opening some interesting overlooks that we could potentially enhance with some benches or general park-wide views, especially the creek, which is a real highlight of the park, Purgatory Creek. A little bit about park access related to trails and parking recommendations. We would like to reinforce the trail system, including the primary and informal trails. Sorry, one second. So the primary trails, there's really two types of trails. There's the primary trails, the ones that we actively maintain, and then there are a lot of informal trails through the park. The primary trails are those ones that are actively maintained by the city. They're generally about 8 to 10 feet wide. We try to plow those as best as we can throughout the winter. And there's also a lot of informal trails through the park. These have developed over the years, folks cutting through the woodland and the wetland areas. These informal trails include a variety, miles essentially, of footpaths through the natural areas. We would seek to develop trails mapping, review and remove redundant trails. That some of these trails tend to go down slopes in inappropriate ways that can increase erosion. We would standardize trail maintenance practices. This would include surfacing of these particular trails, the formal and the informal ones, and determine some standards around trail side mowing where it's appropriate or where it may impact restoration efforts. And finally, we would develop clear and consistent trails mapping and wayfinding to help folks make their way through the park. As part of the master plan process, we identified that a lot of cars park on the Stadola Road cul-de-sac. This is somewhat of an informal park entrance that has developed into a pretty consistent and widely used park park entrance location. One of the recommendations for the master plan would be to review the safety conditions of this particular cul-de-sac at this point, and we would look at the potential of improving this parking location. This study would include a public process and formal council approval. This would be a design effort. Excuse me. As part of this study, we would look at counting the amount of folks that use this particular location.
You have a lot to say.
Yeah, sorry. Need to catch my breath here.
No problem. Long presentation.
So to study this Stodola Road cul-de-sac for safe and accessible vehicle parking and consider the removal of this potential parking in favor of identifying, sorry. I'm just feeling a little dizzy.
That's right. Can we take a break? Yeah.
Should we take a
So
break?
sorry.
Yeah,
So
let's take 10 minutes, yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just feeling a little lightheaded.
Yep, we'll take a break. All right, everyone, we're going to get started here in just a minute. All right, so thanks to everyone. If you were here for the Purgatory Park Master Plan, that has been postponed. And I need to turn to the council and ask for a motion to table the item for tonight. Councilmember Calvert.
Thank you, Mayor. I will make the motion to table the Purgatory Park Master Plan
And
item.
Councilmember O'Malley.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we've got a motion by Councilmember Calvert and a second by Councilmember O'Malley. I will say that when this comes back, stay tuned. The city will, through our communication efforts, will indicate when this is going to come back. And I will also say that when it comes back, there will be opportunity for public comment on the plan. It will not be a formal public hearing, but that's neither here nor there. There will be opportunity for input from residents on the master plan when it comes back to us at another meeting. So with that, Ms. England, would you please call roll?
Romalee,
Here.
Coakley,
Yes.
Foster Bolton,
Yes.
Stack,
Yes.
Wilburn,
Yes.
Calvert,
Yes.
Wearsome.
Yes, and we'll take Councilmember Romalley's here as an affirmative indication on the motion. So we'll do that. So we will come back to the Purgatory Park Master Plan in a future meeting to be determined. So that brings us to the next item, which is an amendment, an ordinance amending section 835.015, subdivision 7 of the Minnetonka City Code relating to storage of waste containers. And Ms. Wishnak, I believe you have that.
I do. Thank you, Mayor and council members. The current regulations regarding, and we're going to just call them waste containers because that's the easiest way. We have lots of different waste happening in our households. And even though we say in the ordinance today waste, yard waste, recyclables, organic materials, we actually kind of change that in the new ordinance. They're to be kept located so they're out of view except on the day of collection. That's what today's ordinance says. As you heard during your study session, we receive as a city about 135 complaints per year over the last 10 years for garbage cans not being in the proper place. For instance, they're out front of the garage, they're located in various places other than being screened, behind a fence, or in the person's garage. A lot of times, though, we have neighbors who complain, but they complain about multiple people in their neighborhood. So you might get one complainant, but 3 addresses. So that could happen in this situation. Off to the right, you can see the city's enforcement policy. As I read through some of the feedback that we got on this ordinance, it's always interesting to me about enforcement. And if you look at our community survey, only about 60% of the time people report issues that they're concerned about. So you have to remember people are not reporting all of what they're seeing. So that when we're on a complaint basis system, that's very important. A lot of people say, well, why does the city regulate this in the first place? Why do we care about location of garbage cans? And some of it has to do with keeping, refuse in a secured area so it doesn't end up in the street, it doesn't end up in the storm sewer, it doesn't end up in our lakes and wetlands, so that's purposeful. Also keeping cans away from streets that have to do with snowplows or other cars or the traveling public. As you know, some streets can get a little bit narrower in Minnetonka, especially when the snow is on them, like in this picture, and it can get quite congested. And then also just an aesthetic. There could be some reasons that people like the look of just a container being in an area. So when you had your October study session in 2023, you talked about should we just remove the language about out of public view? You talked about allowing cans or containers to be placed behind the front building line of the home and not being screened. And then you also just said, well, what if we just continue with the existing language? And so you had some discussion around each of those. So that was in October. Then in March, you had the community survey. And again, for those who don't know, it's not for the council, but for the audience members who don't know, there is a statistically significant survey that's conducted every year. And when they asked about this issue, just generally, do you think waste containers are a problem or an issue that Minnetonka has? And about 32% in 23 and 34% in 24 felt it was a minor issue. There's some people that feel it's a major issue, but most people don't think it's a problem. The majority of the people do not think it's a problem in the city. Then on April 8th, you did have a council introduction of the ordinance. After that introduction, then it was placed on Minnetonka Matters, which is the public feedback portal for the city. And we did get a number of inputs, not as much as the parking, but we did get a fair amount of inputs on this. You can see the full report of everything and all of the public comments in the attachments, which is a report from Minnetonka Matters. What we try to do is just categorize their comments, maybe not specifically, but just say, were they generally in support of the change? About 23 comments said they were. 7 said with changes they would be comfortable with an amendment. 46 of the respondents indicated they did not support the change that was proposed. So the new ordinance and the proposed language that you have in front of you this evening is, except on the day of collection, and I think we got some feedback today that talked about the night before, so we have some alternative language for you on that. Waste containers for residential dwellings must be located either inside the structure or, if outside the structure, behind the front building line of the dwelling. I'm going to stop there and point to the picture on the left. So that's what the ordinance says is allowed. For outside storage, screening of containers is preferred or recommended, but not required. So I'm going to go with the picture on the right. We would prefer this, and this is what's required, some kind of screening either with fencing or with bushes or plantings or what have you. That's what's required today. We would not require that in the new ordinance. For approval, if the council wants to approve this, it does require 4 votes of the council. There is an option, of course, not to adopt the ordinance at all. So I think staff always has a recommendation. We indicated our recommendation would be to adopt the ordinance. I would say that we feel it's a policy decision of the council, so I think you can go either way on this. And I think, you know, based on public opinion, there's both viewpoints, if you will, on whether or not you should adopt this. And also you have to kind of consider all of the community input on the survey as well. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back to you to discuss whether or not to adopt the language on waste containers.
All right, thank you, Ms. Wishnak. First of all, council, any questions for staff on what was presented? Anyone? Councilmember O'Malley.
Yeah, I was wondering, do we have the community survey question wording available? If not, that's fine. But when we asked if it's a problem, is it a problem under the, you know, either having people putting stuff out or having things in view? Or I just want to make sure I understand how the wording is.
Sure.
Because if it's like the overnight parking, it could be interpreted in 2 ways.
Sure. Let me, Mayor and Councilmember O'Malley, let me read the question specifically to you.
Thank you.
The survey question is, please tell me if it, which in this case is the wording is waste container, is a major problem in Minnetonka, a minor problem, or a problem not at all. That's the exact wording, waste container storage.
Councilor O'Malley?
Yeah, I'll just make a comment that is somewhat unclear. It could be interpreted in multiple ways. So
it's a list of questions. So I think there are 5 in this category. So do you think this is a problem, this is a problem, and you go by subject? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it can be interpreted in my reading of it. When I remember I went back and read that, is that is it a problem currently where people leave it out, or is it a problem that, you know, you have to deal with things the way that they are, and it's an issue that you have to provide screening?
Right. Mayor and Councilmember O'Malley, if I may, Mayor, react.
Ms. Wishnak.
Thank you. The point of this is getting a pulse, right? it's not to say is an ordinance needed or not. It's really how big of a deal is this to people, and leave it at that. And then when you get into more of the ordinance, then that's when I would use the Minnetonka Matters. Like, what do people think of the actual language? The first one's a pulse. The second one's kind of specific. Thank you.
Very good. Other questions? Anyone? All right. Well, I think we'll take public comment on this issue. I know that we've received a number of emails and communications with different residents. So if you would like to speak to this item, please come forward, state your name and address, and share with us what you choose to share. Good evening. Welcome.
Hello, Thomas Merrick, 16940 Grays Bay Boulevard. I have a question about the pulse, because it looks to me like from these surveys, what you saw first in feeling the pulse in the community was that actually absolute majority does not see it as a problem. And then when you outline it for the, or gave it to the public opinion, you got an absolute majority that does not support it. And so then you make the conclusion that we are adopting or we are proposing this ordinance. And I don't understand, when you have an absolute majority saying it's not a problem and then more people say we do not support it, why bring it forward? That's just my question.
And I will take a shot at answering that, but we discussed it as a council, and there were some on the council that indicated that they wanted the question considered, and so we agreed that we can bring it forward in a meeting like this. Nobody said, no one said that I'm going to vote for this or I'm not going to vote for this. They basically said that it's a legitimate question. Let's bring it to a council meeting and discuss it and have a public forum on it. So both this one and the parking one we're kind of discussed in the same way, and that's why it was brought forward. It was not, gee, we think a majority of people want to do this. It's, okay, is this an issue, and does it warrant being on a regular meeting, council meeting agenda? And we agreed that it did. So, hope that's helpful. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Steve Lyon, 15237 Lynn Terrace. And, just learning how this process works, it does seem like you raise a good question about the surveys, and it's certainly true with the parking. But with this, who knows what that tells us? And it just seems like the wording might have been flawed. Like example on the parking, it says that very few people see it as a problem, but would it be a problem if you adopt it on street parking? And so I wonder about that, and then I also wonder about both these ordinances are being endorsed by the people here, right? That's the way I read it. The recommendation.
Please, you're talking to the council, not to them.
Okay, yeah.
So,
okay, fine.
So direct your comments this way, and then if you have questions, that we'll ask the staff to respond.
Okay, all right. So, but is that not something the council can answer? Is how it just seems like a disconnect to me when you do a survey and is overwhelmingly against it, but then you get a recommendation that says we're in support of this, or we're recommending to the council that they pass the ordinance. Am I misunderstanding the process?
Yeah, a little bit. I
Okay.
think, and I'll let Mr. Funk comment on that, but in my conversations with staff, the staff is really indifferent on this, but based upon the will of the council expressed informally in a study session, they felt that they should bring it forward. So then they're in the situation where, okay, do I make a recommendation? Well, if you, I think the point is, and perhaps the city attorney wants to help me, but if you want to adopt this, here's a proposed ordinance, but the staff doesn't know how we're going to vote on this.
Okay, so they're not saying.
I don't think anyone's advocating for anything at this juncture.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
And I hope I explained that reasonably.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Hello, Joel Stone, 6930 Grays Bay Boulevard, Minnetonka. The public facing on this, mayor, council members, and staff, The public facing on this question came up, and the very first statement on the public facing webpage that everybody saw, including me, was that the City of Minnetonka is proposing an ordinance that provides more options for property owners for placement of their waste. In reality, no new placement options were offered. And when you see the 23 supporters there, if you read the detail, all 23 of those people are saying, wow, we can take our trash out of the garage now and put it on the side of the house. But they can do that today under the current ordinance. So there's no new placement options. So I would submit that the first statement on the public facing of the webpage is false. And that's everything that comes after that is fruit of the poisonous tree. And it can't, like, it throws off the counts because the support is for moving it out of the garage next to the house. And that's allowed today. So the feedback is based on a false initial statement. And everything comes off that. And then I brought this up like, I don't know, 3 weeks ago. Again, I'm sorry for my tone, but I did bring it up and nothing changed. It's still, the false statement is still there. And people are thinking, hey, they're giving us a new option to move it to the side of the house. But, you know, I watched the Kia Walzer thing, and there are a lot of residents really upset, but it was handled so well. You know, staff presented unbiased, in my opinion. They were very unbiased. Council, everyone up here asked great questions. The people, the public comment, they came up and they asked questions, and I remember you wrote everyone down and you read them back to staff and they responded to everyone. Some people were happy with the answers, some weren't, but at least everyone was heard. So I think the false statement at the beginning that there's new placement options, I don't think the English language has any ambiguity there. You can't see that there's new placement options being the same placement, the same location. Okay, now you can take the screen down. And so my request is to start the process over. I think the parking and the trash are intertwined. They're too close together. I'm afraid what'll happen is City Council will say, you know, there's two proposals here. This is a red herring. Nobody wants more exposed trash in our neighborhoods. Let's throw this one out, but let's pass the parking. They're so intertwined. I think that they should be separated. Different nights, different proposals, different surveys, and have true questions, true statements, accurate statements. And I don't want to go down the slippery slope where false statements are made, everyone's running around, people are upset, and there's a lot of these respondents questioning the motivation. Like, who wants more exposed trash in our neighborhoods? Makes no sense. And parking, you know, are we going to do different public comments for parking?
They are two separate items on the agenda,
Tonight.
so they are indeed separate.
So my ask is to start the process over, but both with parking and with trash. Don't just send the trash one back to the starting line and let the parking go through. Separate them both. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Kathy Parrish, 14701 Copperfield Place. I might be a little slow on how this was even brought up, but why is it an issue? Why is it on the agenda? Why can't we leave it the way it was, or still is? Why is it on an agenda to change it?
And I'll answer that, as I think I mentioned it to it earlier, that a council member indicated that there was a concern about it, and so we as a council discussed it and thought that it could come forward as a question to be considered by the council.
So were there complaints about the trash issue? So the way I read this, if it complaints of they're on the street or they're exposed, or they want to put it on the street and expose them. The opposite?
Well,
We'll comment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't understand the rationale behind it. Just leave it the way it was. It makes the city look better. I live in a neighborhood that there is one particular house that keeps their trash there for weeks on the street, and I've walked it up and I put it on the side of their garage. I guess I could call the city and they could come out, but I'd rather just move it on up. But I just see it as an eyesore, and our city's too pretty for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Staff, council, mayor. Sorry.
Good evening.
Michelle Nelson. I live at 14711 Copperfield Place. I think we've done so many things to make our community so beautiful. And now you want people to just put their trash alongside of the house. I live in the same neighborhood as Kathy. We have a very nice neighborhood, and yet we have a neighbor who leaves his trash can down at the end of his driveway 24/7, 7 days a week. Sometimes the garbage is picked up, sometimes it's not. Is that what we want to look like? I mean, why? I guess I'm with Kathy. Why are you changing this ordinance? I think if you change it, you're going to see everybody with their garbage cans right outside the garage. It's just the way things are. Things aren't getting better in neighborhoods. They just aren't.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else? We're going to try and move things along here. So come up, or we'll end this and bring it back to the council. All right, so thank you for your comments. Councilmember Shack.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to take the bull by the horns. I think there's some context missing in how this conversation came to be, and I'll speak on behalf of the council member who brought this up last year. And there was a trash battle in his neighborhood, and it's a neighborhood with small garages, a lot of growing families with multiple drivers in their home, so full driveways, not room for trash in the garage, and it was causing a lot of strife. Certainly some neighbors were reporting trash cans being left out. Some neighbors felt that their trash cans they had no place for them. So that kind of kicked off a discussion. We heard from more people. It wasn't just this former council member, but it was other people from around the community. And it was really important to us. We talked for a long time about it to say, let's address this. This seems to be an issue. I certainly have a lot of empathy for folks who live in more modest homes with smaller garages and big families residing in the home. The suggestion, certainly, I was at the meeting, the suggestion that there was some grander ulterior motive that related to trying to increase density or any of that was not, was certainly not a motive. I can assure you of that. The one thing that I'll just give my opinion, this isn't an issue for me. It's not something I hear about a lot, but when it is a problem, it is a real problem for folks. And I am sympathetic. When these 1950s, 60s, 70s style houses were built, these modest homes, everybody had one round metal garbage can that could easily fit in the corner of their garage. We're asking people to keep recycling. People certainly still need regular trash, and people are wanting to use organics recycling, and they're busting out of their space. And so, I can empathize with the need for it. I'll be honest, I could go either way on this. This is not a hill that I would want to die on. I think the people who care about it really care about it, but what the survey is saying is most people don't really care about this issue. So that's kind of the context. And again, it's so frustrating to read the comments with this idea that the city council is just up here trying to figure out ways to pull the wool over people's eyes. It's just, many of us have full-time jobs, and we are not
toiling at night thinking about how we can scheme on our residents. We're just trying to get all of our work done. So that's my defensive response.
Thank you, Councilmember Shack. Councilmember O'Malley?
Yes, I have a question and a comment. Thank you, Mayor. My question is, or just wanted to confirm something, and a follow-up from Councilmember Shack is, the current ordinance, as we see here, allows there to be already outside the garage storage. It has to be behind the front line of the property. The main thing that we're talking about here is whether it has to be screened or not. So just wanted to clarify that for everybody in case it's not clear, because I've had a lot of residents contacting me about this. And I think that there was a little bit of lack of clarity on that, and it's certainly something that we can look at, maybe doing a little bit differently next time to make sure. And I would also comment that also there are different ways that a proposed, and again, this is a proposed ordinance, comes to the council. One way is through surveys. Another way is through study sessions that percolate up through our city council study sessions that come between regular meetings. So there are a number of ways, but just because an ordinance is proposed up here and brought before the council doesn't mean that, like you said, we're scheming to do this. So I just wanted to do a little bit of kind of public education on this system of how things work and percolate up to us. That's why we're having this hearing and this meeting, to allow residents a chance to give additional feedback on that as we consider this. So please don't, kind of labor under the false impression that there's something already been predetermined here. It has not. And, we're up here to hear the information, digest all of the information that staff has presented in the packet from Minnetonka Matters, and then make the best decision that we can based on our values and our understanding and evaluation of that information. So, please, I would just ask people to, act in good faith and not necessarily jump to these negative conclusions or conspiracy theories, because it doesn't do any of us any good. So, with that was my comment, and I guess my question, again, it was already confirmed with the screening, so thank you for that opportunity to make that comment.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Malley. Councilmember Wilburn.
Yeah, so sort of echoing what my fellow council members have said, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but these two ordinances are separate. We consider them separately. There was no sort of plan that, we can get the second one through if we get rid of the first one. That's, none of us have time for that kind of thing. So they're separate. We consider them separately. We don't make up our minds before we come to council. So and as Councilmember Shack indicated, it was brought by a council member as an equity issue, and then I just wanted to talk about the numbers, the survey results. So the community survey, a much larger sampling size of people answered that survey. The public comment is obviously not it's self-selected, right? So it's not people being randomly queried. It's people that chose to answer the question. And as you know, it's human nature that if you're unhappy with something, you're much more likely to go and make a comment about it than if you're happy with it or don't care. So when I'm we've had, since I've been on council, there have been several things where people will say, well, look, there's more people who are against this, or there's more people who are in favor of this. I don't just look at the numbers. I take that into account, but there are more things to consider than just the number of people who weighed in on one side or the other.
Councilmember Coakley.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment about a person who lives in Minnetonka that has a 1967 home, and have 3 containers in my garage, and it's very crowded. And now with the yard waste container that we're paying for, I might as well call them up and say, can you deliver my waste container? And then that would be another container in my garage. Well, even though there's only 2 people in my household, 4 containers in my garage is a lot of container. My understanding about the ordinance, we can't have the waste containers on the side of the home unless it's shielded with what you see in the picture with the shield on it. And so I just think of homes that have this type of issue, or either have more people in their homes and just don't have the space. Maybe got it's a 2-car garage like my garage, and there's other homes that have 2-car garage, don't have the parking space, the long driveway. I mean, that is some of the reasons why we did talk about it, and it is an equity issue. We talked about that as well, and so I'm just bringing more information on why we consider this. Yes, do sometimes people leave their waste cans at the end of their garage, driveway, but and they probably shouldn't, because it doesn't look good. And you know, we want our residents to make sure that they're removing their waste cans right away. Sometimes, you know, there are folks that don't do that. They, you know, like you said, you have a neighbor who's not being a good neighbor, we call it. But for us not to have another option for folks who do have smaller garages and do have a larger family, and there is a way to meet all the needs without saying that, oh, we're going to have trash cans on the end of the garage, or trash is everywhere, you know. I'm not convinced of that, and so I'm just going to say that I'm just not convinced of it. So thank you.
Councilmember Foster Bolton.
Yeah, the first house that we moved to in Minnetonka had a detached single-car garage, and so we were never able to put our garbage in the garage, and we never did, to be honest, but nobody complained. And so when we moved to the bigger house, we didn't put our garbage in the garage then, until I became a city council member and became aware of this ordinance. And I was like, wow, we didn't even know. And so it seems like it's a problem. It's usually, you know, a problem when a neighbor, it bothers a neighbor, in which case then if somebody would have said, hey, put your garbage cans away, we probably would have. I mean, granted, not all the neighbors are like that, but it seems so few and far between that this has become this problem that I'm agree that it had not occurred to me, any of this, before I became a city council member, to be honest.
Other comments? Councilor Calvert?
Yeah, so, you know, one of the things about ordinances is that staff has to enforce them. We don't have to enforce them. It creates work for staff. And so, first of all, they're not likely to recommend. You know, there was some misunderstanding about what the recommendation was. And my goal is not to create a solution in search of a problem or create extra work for staff or unenforceable ordinances. And I live in a 1954 Rambler with a very small, tight 2-car garage, and we got emails and comments from people that were weighing in on this issue, describing how they have retaining walls on the side of their driveways, so there's not, you know, if you can't fit it in the garage, there's really not any place to put it. And because these older homes have such tight garage, they're not designed for containing cars and all of the modern things that we have to do, like, you know, 3 or more trash or recycling or organics containers. So it came up because there was a trash war. It came up because a particular council member was trying to help a neighborhood sort of balance their competing interests while trying to maintain our beautiful city. So, you know, we take great pride, as one of our residents mentioned, we have a beautiful city and we want to keep it that way. And we also, you know, have to be mindful of, you know, challenges that certain households have in meeting ordinances. That said, because we are a complaint-based enforcement city, unless somebody, you know, if somebody really has a problem with what their neighbors are doing, there's always recourse, and it is enforced. It goes to staff, and they enforce the ordinance. And so, you know, I certainly have been kind of ambivalent. It's just as regards trash, because I'm very sympathetic because of the kind of house I live in, and because of some of the comments that we got. But I also feel like it clearly in the surveys and the comments, it just is not a big deal to most of the people in the city. And so for me personally, I'm kind of a, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of person. And so I personally, I just don't know that it rises. I was happy to try to support a colleague that was trying to wrangle a neighborhood that was really unhappy about the situation on both sides of the issue. But I'm not sure for myself personally that I want to make a huge change and create extra work of enforcement for staff. So that's kind of where I'm falling on this issue.
Councilmember Romali.
Sorry, I do not want to belabor this at all, but again, I want to question and clarify. We already have an ordinance that allows people to put their trash and recycling containers outside of their garage, behind the front line of the garage. The only thing that we are deciding here is whether it has to be screened or not. Again, I have to comment, you know, again, following up on some of my Ward 3 neighbors and others here tonight, that, you know, we do indeed, our vision statement is to have a beautiful, sustainable place. And I do feel if we are homeowners, responsible homeowners, unless there's extenuating circumstances such as a retaining wall right up against your garage, that you can't put it up behind the front line of your house or garage, which actually I don't have a garage, so I actually do have this situation. But unless there is that, if you're a responsible homeowner, it shouldn't be a big deal to screen. If you're renting a home, then have your landlord indeed should be responsible for doing so. If there are issues, then, you know, maybe approach the city if you're having trouble installing a screening or some sort of enclosure. But I think that, you know, we need to do what we can to maintain this city as a beautiful, sustainable place. So I am not inclined to change the ordinance at this time.
You know, we are, public comment is over, so.
Those visuals are in conflict with what she's saying.
Well, they are not. They are, but no, we're not going to. Excuse me, we're not going to debate it. That part of the meeting is over, and we are now under discussion. So you get to listen. So, Councilmember Wilburn.
So, sorry, both. So, I will say though that it could potentially be a problem for someone to screen. That's a financial output to provide screening. And not everyone has the financial means to do that. And I also would say that I would say the new proposed ordinance would be less for staff, less work for staff, because there's more options so that it'd be less violations. So again, and just again to clarify, so under the current ordinance is the picture on the far right, that's preferred under the proposed ordinance, but required under the current ordinance. So under the proposed ordinance, you can have stuff on the side of the house with or without screening, but we'd prefer it to have screening.
Very good. Any other comments? Anyone? I'll comment. We sometimes get to decide kind of small things, and I want to, but we do care about the way our community looks, and my preference is to not change an ordinance that applies to everybody. Rather, have homeowners who are having problems complying contact the staff and work out a one-off because it's more efficient. And I think that, I know that we do have homeowner repair programs. We have homeowner, I don't know if this could qualify or not, but if somebody needed screening and they couldn't afford to do it, I would rather work off individual problems than change an ordinance that could have an impact upon the whole community and then kind of reduce the standard and have a real impact on how our community looks. I want to be compassionate to people who struggle with this, but I don't think it's that many. And I think that, by and large, it's, I think that screening could be, you could buy an arborvitae at the plant sale for not too much money, plant 2 of them in front of the corner of your house, and you have screening. So I think that there are ways forward that handle the equity issue, and I think that doing this more surgically rather than changing the ordinance would be my preference. So that's my view. Not saying it's right, it's saying it's my view. So we probably do need a motion either to adopt or not adopt this ordinance. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Mayor, before
Yeah,
you
excuse
make that
me.
motion, I just want to make sure the city attorney can weigh in on the except on day of collection, comma, or the evening before, I think is the
right.
proposed language. Corinne, if you can verify.
So,
Ms. Heine.
excuse me, Mayor and council members, if you wanted to address the fact that most people put their containers out the night before, you could say except on the evening before and the day of collection, and then the rest of the proposed ordinance would remain the same if the council is moving to adopt.
All right, so do we have to indicate that we'd prefer that language before we decide to adopt or not? Or if somebody makes a motion, they have to indicate they'd like to include that language?
If the motion is to adopt, the motion should include the proposed language that the mover would like in the ordinance. And then if somebody wanted to amend that motion, you could have a motion to amend. But if there's a motion to adopt, include the language. If the council doesn't want to adopt, you request a motion, and if there is no more motion forthcoming, it dies.
All right. So, Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Mayor. Another question, can we make a motion not to adopt but to amend so that we can do the containers out the night before?
You could move an amendment to the existing ordinance with the language, just adding that, and just adding that on the evening before or on the day of collection. You could do that. I think that's within the scope of, we had an ordinance introduced, and that
council amendment tonight would be within the scope. We wouldn't have to start the process over.
So, Councilman Romali, it's up to you. If you'd like to make that motion, you're welcome to do it.
I will make that motion. I would make the motion to not adopt the proposed ordinance and instead to amend, thank you, the current city regulation ordinance that states that waste yard, waste, recyclables, organic materials, and the containers in which they are kept must be located so they are out of public view except on the day of collection and the night before. Collection.
Very good.
Yes.
Period.
Just a suggestion, you don't need the first part. You can simply move to adopt an ordinance amending Section 835.015 by adding and the evening before at the end of the sentence.
I will make the motion then to maintain the current city regulation 835.0157 with the addition of except on the evening before collection.
Very good.
And on the evening before collection. Yes. No.
Very good.
Except on. Yeah.
Except on the day
Day
of
of
collection.
and the evening before collection.
Very good. So we have a motion. Is there a second to that motion? Councilmember Calvert?
I'll second.
All right. We've got a motion and a second. Ms. England, please call roll.
Romali,
Yes.
Coakley,
No.
Foster Bolton,
No.
Shack,
Yes.
Wilburn,
No.
Calvert,
Yes.
Wearsome.
Yes. So motion carries. So that takes us to item 14C, which is an ordinance amending Minnetonka City Code Section 930.030 Subdivision 6 relating to overnight parking restrictions. And Ms. Wishnak.
Okay, here we go. Thank you, Mayor and council members. Again, this is a very similar discussion you had talked about. I think, you know, what we talked about in the study session last October is, you know, there's a lot of open communication that needs to happen between residents and the city staff. A lot of times we have reasons for having parking regulations talking about limited parking maybe on their property or in an area. Perhaps you have unauthorized parking happening. There could be some intrusion into private property. There could be lack of off-street parking provided on the site. Sometimes we have abandoned or inoperable vehicles. That is an enforcement situation in the city. And then also we have city maintenance operations in public works that impact how people are parking and where they're parking and when that can happen. I think some of the discussion the council had was, you know, we have a changing demographic, we have various household sizes, people are remote working more often, and really some of that kind of conversation through COVID and afterwards caused the city, I think, to talk about this issue of parking regulations. I think there are some things to consider. Inadequate enforcement could be viewed as one issue, and I'm talking about, again, this reporting of issues. So you have some people reporting it in some neighborhoods because it's bothersome to them, and other neighbors maybe just don't feel the need to call and do the enforcement. So there's probably some haphazardness about enforcement. And then there's, of course, disputes about enforcement. Let's say you don't have enough parking on site and that's your only choice is to park the vehicle on the street. And this is in the overnight hours that I'm talking about. And so you could have some disputes about unfair ticketing and not having enough options for folks. We did talk about this too during the study session when the original overnight parking ordinance was adopted. It was in 1956. That was pretty much when the town was founded, and that was when the idea of prohibiting parking at that time between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. was the original ordinance. And then in 1972, there was also a limit for only 2 hours, and in 77 it was changed to 6 hours, no more than 6 hours in a spot. And the ordinances, you know, at the time they were talking about promoting safety. There wasn't a lot of street lighting. There's still, I would say, pretty low level street lighting in the city. Some streets are narrow, some are wider and allow for a little bit more room. And at that time, after dark activities were not as common. You can see that in 1956, 11 was kind of the shutdown time, and now moving that to 2 a.m. was kind of a change in time, and as the decades went on. On-street parking also was viewed a little bit more like an urban issue and not so much as a suburban pattern that occurred. So how does enforcement work? We do both have enforcement mechanisms in the police department as well as in community development, and we do receive parking complaints. It really depends on what it is, and that's how we respond to it. The online portal system is mostly how people are complaining about that, or direct calls to the police department. Staff does review the complaint. We decide what the appropriate action is, and then if there's a violation confirmed, we actually contact the responsible party first and then inform them of the complaint. We try to work to resolve the complaint. So if someone's parking overnight, we try to, I know Chief Borboom's here, they'll issue written warnings first, and then they will move to citations after that if there is not cooperation. To help you understand, the police department has received about, in 2022, 739 parking related complaints. Of those, 136 were for overnight parking, the 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. time slot. And in 23, the police department had 625 parking related complaints, of which 132 were for that same time period. There's also situational things that happen. So you have parking issues. We had the new development on Fairfield, and there was lots of parking complaints there. So we did some observations, and then we did do a total no parking on that street just because of the narrowness and kind of the congestion that was happening. So I think that's the point too of the ordinance that's being considered tonight. It doesn't change any of the prior council actions. For instance, in this neighborhood, Fairfield, I got a few phone calls from the neighbors in this neighborhood thinking that that would change their situation. So anything that you do tonight does not unroll a previous resolution enacted by the council for a no parking area. And we've done that in various areas. So you can see, I think by the high school, well, both high schools, there's various no parking requirements. And so it depends on the street. There are many resolutions over the years that have been passed for that, and that doesn't come undone if you adopt a new ordinance. So I wanted to make sure that I was clear about that. During your October study session, you talked about leaving it as is. You talked about eliminating it entirely, just letting people park in the street at all times of the year. But there was a conversation about winter issues and snow emergencies and all of that. That would have to be enacted if you did the anytime parking on the street. And then option 3 tended to be the one that people talked about the most, and that would just be eliminating the 2 to 6 a.m. during April and October. So that was in October. And in March, again, the same kind of language was used in the community survey, asking people if they felt it was a major problem or not. A little bit closer on this one. 54% didn't think it was a problem at all, and then minor problem 40%, and 6% felt it was a major problem. Same thing, April 8th, the ordinance was introduced, and then we did receive a lot of online commentary. If you read the report closely, there was over 1,000 views of it, so there were a lot of people paying attention. Not as many saying what they thought, but a lot of people were aware of the city's at least the proposal to do something different in the ordinance. So 9 supported the changes, 9 said, well, maybe if you did some other things that they wanted, and so there were lots of suggestions there. And then 82 of those respondents did not support changes at all in the ordinance. So again, the same situation here where you have adoption, you can adopt it, it requires 4 of you to agree on the ordinance or to not adopt the ordinance and basically take no action. So, Mayor, it's with that, I turn it back to you. I know another hard discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Wishnack. And I will first ask council if they have any questions for staff on this topic. Anyone? Councilmember Wilburn.
So City Manager Mike Funk and I talked about this this afternoon. I know the way the proposed ordinance is written, there's no, it's just a blanket ordinance for the city, except for, as you explained, areas that have already been designated no parking. But some of the concerns that have been expressed are people that live on narrower streets where they feel it would be a safety issue to have street parking. And so is there any way to evaluate different neighborhoods and say maybe, you know, only one side of the street or not at all? So, yeah.
Ms. Wishnack.
Yes, thank you. This involves obviously Public Works, but it also involves the police department in terms of the enforcement side of it. So Public Works takes care of the signage and the evaluation on whether or not the signage should be placed. Police then enforce it after the installation. Any neighborhood can request that evaluation be done. I think the problem tends to be that while it sounds good in concept that they don't want parking in front of their home, then it kind of becomes reality when we talk about the sign locations, and then you don't have any place for visitors to park, especially if you have a smaller driveway or something like that. And so while that's what I find the most often happens, where it sounds like a good idea and then the realities of it set in. Sometimes it works okay with a one-sided parking situation, but again, anybody can ask for that evaluation and conversation to occur, and that does flow through Will's department in Public Works. Okay.
And one other question. We also discussed whether police and fire, if they have any concerns about this ordinance as far as being able to respond.
Chief Borboom.
Good evening.
I'm glad you had a chance to come up because you've been hanging around for a long time.
Councilmember Wilburn, so it's really no different than the daytime. So if there was an estate sale on a street during the daytime at 2 p.m., you'd have cars parked on the street. So it would apply at night as well. We find, and I talked to Police Chief Kevin Fox, and they have the biggest pieces of equipment, and they navigate through all our streets, whether it's daytime or nighttime. So I don't see that being a factor.
Chief, you're the police chief. Kevin Fox is a fire chief.
Did I say police chief?
You did. You did. See, it's getting late. You know, that happens. None of us are as good later at night, but I wanted to be clear. All right, council, other questions? You know, I've got one. So, you know, we've all had the situation where we've got kids who are grown up and they come home and they're there, and you know, I live in a house that has we've got a driveway, but it's a shared driveway, and so I don't have as much space. And you know, if all my kids are home or you know, for the holidays or whatever, and you have maybe guests and they're staying overnight, and boy, we don't have enough space, so we'd like to park on the street. Is there a workaround that if I have somebody who's going to be parking on the street, that I can call the police department and say, hey, you know, overnight we're gonna park on the street. FYI, how does that all work? Do you do that?
Yes, Mayor. Short answer, yes. In the current ordinance, there is a provision that allows me and actually the city manager to provide temporary changes to the parking restriction. You know, it might be where it's no parking, we go and cover no parking, or the opposite, where you may have an event that you want us to flag one side, we'll go out and we mark one side of the street. So kind of to your point on the earlier on the recycle, it's those one-offs. If there's a need for an event, we'll go out and assess it and make it work for the homeowner without having to change the entire city.
Very good. Thank you for that. So council, before we will take public comment on this, but council, any other questions or anything that you'd like clarified before we move to public comment? Yes, Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking at the proposed ordinance, and I do have a question, point of information, I guess, that could you confirm, so during the summer months then, would a vehicle be able to be in one place for longer than 6 hours? So are we looking at days on end during these overnights? If we allow the overnight parking, if we were to go ahead, what would this mean for kind of continuous parking, you know, kind of for days on end? Would that be allowed?
Mayor and Councilmember Romali, it does still have the language in any one place for a longer period than 6 hours. I think when we talked about this during the study session, that is a very difficult portion of the ordinance to enforce. It would require you to track that vehicle and make sure that it's been sitting there for 6 hours. I think that's been the challenge in the past, but technically, yes, it's still in the ordinance.
Anything? Are you good? It's, so I'll tell you a recent circumstance that there was a car parked on the street outside my house that I didn't recognize. And I know the police chief. So I took a picture of the car and the license plate, and I said, check this car. Does this car belong here? Because I didn't recognize the car. And he said, oh, the last name is X, and that X was my next door neighbor. So, but it wasn't a family member who lived there, but maybe they were on, you know, they went away and the car was there for a week. But I said, well, I have no complaint then. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't a car that somebody stole and dropped or something like that. And, you know, I think it's things like that that we have to, you know, we have to pursue these one-off things and check them out, because, you know, cars do get stolen and cars do get dumped in neighborhoods and things like that. And we want to be able to check those things out. But again, it's that painting, how broad a brush do we want to paint with is kind of the question I would ask. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. Any other things before we go to public comment? Otherwise, anyone in the audience like to comment on this? And if so, please, the rules are the same. Come forward, state your name and address, and make your comment. And we're going to try and move this through this kind of quickly. So if you think you want to comment, get ready to go.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor Wiersum, members of the council, my name is Jan Malcolm. I am at 17488 Hampton Court. I grew up here and just recently moved back to Minnetonka after living in the city of Minneapolis for most of my career. I appreciate the discussion, and I want to start by thanking you for your service. I think there are some parallels, and you've already heard about that from the prior topic to this one, just in terms of the benefit to the community of better understanding the thought process of how things come before the council and to what degree the case for change has been made. And it seems in this instance, like the prior, and perhaps to a greater degree, as I think one of the prior commenters mentioned, this really seems like a very significant change for the city. And I think some of the safety concerns that were present when the ordinance was first introduced are still the same. And arguably, with the rising crime that we've seen, some of those safety concerns, I would say, are exacerbated. So the question is, what are the benefits that are being sought? And I've heard members express convenience to family and visitors. But whether there is a way, as I think, Mayor, you suggested, to try to find a more surgical approach might make a lot of sense. If I understood the prior discussion, the 6-hour limit staying in place while the overnight restriction is removed really seems like an illogical combination to me. So my suggestion or request is that this be continued for at least more study about, or discussion about, whether a more targeted approach would make more sense. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And Ms. Malcolm, welcome to Minnetonka. I didn't know you lived here, and thank you for your service to our state.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, Steve Lyon, 15237 Lynn Terrace. You know, it does sound like the law needs to be changed, at least the 6-hour thing. But you know, in our neighborhood, you know, parking is a big deal. We don't have a lot of people parking on the street. They might have 2 cars per household, maybe 2 people per household. But it does seem like it's a problem in search of a solution. If you look at most of Minnetonka, you've got homes that, worst case, are short driveways like ours that can hold 4 cars, and you have maybe a 1 or 2 car driveway or garage. And so, what circumstances are we having a regulation to handle anybody that has 5 or more cars? And if we did have an extra car and we want it to be in with the law, we could park it on our lawn. That's not against the law in Minnetonka. And we found that with the case of this house that I mentioned earlier. They had all kinds of stuff parked on their lawn. They never had anything parked on the street, though. And we're talking buses, we were talking shuttles, and there wasn't much we could do about it. And, you know, I have some experience with parking. I'm a process server, and I go all over the Twin Cities, and I have to park. I have to find a parking space. But I also see what seems to happen with neighborhoods that that allow more parking, where there's no connection between cars and parking spaces. And it does seem like it does make the neighborhoods go down faster. If you allow cars to be parked on the street overnight, you're just going to get more cars. It's that simple. And lived in Minneapolis, we had a car that was there for a year. Okay, we called and we had to keep track of it, and it was there for a year. It was pretty much abandoned, but you got to have regulations. And you know, we talk about surveys. It's great that we heard from the police department. I was wondering that. First responders. How about the trash companies? Where I live, we see trash companies come all day long. We live on a cul-de-sac. They spend a lot of time figuring out how to get the trash, how to get through the cul-de-sac. They're not even worried about the cars. It is problematic. And I would just say that it's nice to, you know, if you're going to do it, it just seems like something you could target to the areas where it's most needed, you know, deal with the one-offs sort of thing, rather than make the rest of the city pay. I do think it's a nice attribute of the city that we have these nice, clean streets without any extra cars on them, and that and the tree cover is one of the things that I appreciate about the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? But you can come up too. We'll just keep things moving.
Joel Stone, 16930 Grays Bay Boulevard, Mayor, council members, and staff. I want to say great job on the Minnetonka Boulevard walkway to the Groveland schools. That is so nice. I know it's a huge project, probably for a lot of people, and it makes it so much safer every day for the last 3 years, or I don't know how long it's been. I've been watching it slowly progress. And it was such an endeavor, and it made it so much safer. I see kids on that every day with their parents, with the bikes, made it so much safer. Now we got this. And our roads are narrow in Minnetonka. So I know people think, and it's true, you'll say technically the roads have not changed to be more narrow. But now we have curbs. Cars used to be able to park up on the grass, up on the sand. Half the car would be off the road. Now there's a curb. Now this road, the parking roadway is narrower, even though the dimension of the road is the same. But it turns out it is narrower because of the curbs. And there's no sidewalks. So now mom comes along, she sits every day on Lakeshore, and her dad pushing the stroller, and she has to go out in the middle of the road. And here comes a garbage truck. Well, what do? That's not safe. It's not making it more safe. And night parking does not mean night parking. We say this is about night parking. No. Night parking means all week parking. Now a car can sit on, as you stated, it's really hard to enforce the 6-hour rule or any rule. If I see a car on the street at night, I know something's wrong. If we pass this rule, car could be on the street, it might be okay, might not be. It might be there for a week. I don't know, but it can be. And this ordinance, in the ordinance, it says it provides consideration regarding safety. It doesn't sound like safety to me. That's one of the stipulations in the actual ordinance write-up that was part of the agenda for this bullet point. let's see. And parking is already allowed by request, I'm glad you brought that up. I've requested it many times, have some family or bigger group over, and that's great. What my ask would be is to do it like other cities do. At Minneapolis Institute of Arts, parking rules are different around there. It's a residential area. They have signs, certain signs, only for residents can park here. You have to have a pass or whatever. Like you mentioned surgically with the trash. Surgically, if you want to do some special case, go in and make rules for that special case on a case-by-case surgical basis. If there's not enough parking in the area, not enough garages, not enough driveways, go ahead and address that. But to make it citywide, I think is not good for safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. Chris Falk, 17560 Hampton Court, Minnetonka. I grew up in Minnetonka, and I've lived here all my life. It's a beautiful, beautiful city. It's a safe city. This is my first time to the city council, and I'll let you know why. They've always just done the Minnetonka thing. They've always just, we all know how we bought here for a reason. People like it the way it is. So I've never had to, I'm here. It's not safe. Our streets would not be safe, and I will encourage all of you to go to MME when it gets out of school and look at the side roads. I live off of one of those side roads, and all the moms and dads are parked to pick up the kids, and there are kids walking home, and there are neighbors walking their dogs, and I'm driving my car trying to get into the neighborhood, and it is dangerous. It's very dangerous, and it happens twice a day. Now we want to have cars parked on one side of the road all the time. You wouldn't be able to get up and down the street. You wouldn't. Parking cars all night long. I believe the police department just hired a new detective for strictly the purpose of handling the vehicle crime in Minnetonka. And they're stealing those cars out of garages. You want to line the streets with cars. Do you not think the criminal element will think that's a great thing? We don't have streetlights. We don't have sidewalks for the walking. These are just some major things that have come to my attention. I would highly encourage you to consider, please do not do this to this beautiful, wonderful suburb. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Falk. Is there anyone else?
Thomas Merrick, dear Mayor and council members. I just want to say I'm from 16940 Grace Bay Boulevard. I just want to say I heard a few times, I heard the word which kind of justifies these propositions, seemingly the word that it's done for inclusivity or equity. I want to say, as somebody who's married to my wife of color, and from a neighborhood where there are several immigrants and people from other countries, this is offensive, and I hear that. And they would be considered offensive to hear that for those people, it's done for inclusivity. Just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, then I will bring it back to the council for discussion and comment and a motion. And we don't even have to discuss it. We can just make a motion if you'd like. Thoughts? Councilmember Coakley.
I'd like to make a comment. So, I wanted to make a comment. I did talk to, I believe his name is Steven. He called me over the weekend and talked about parking on the streets. And I do, I listened to him talk and go on about why he thought that parking wouldn't be safe. And I agree, after listening to him, that on some streets, parking may not be safe. I thought about like Excelsior and, hearing the resident talk about at MME, needing to go around the cars when parents are parked. So I agree with that on some streets, but then I also know, like, on some streets, on side streets in neighborhoods, you can park on those streets, and I think it is okay to park on some streets. So I think maybe not on all streets where you need parking, but on some residential areas, I think it would be okay to park on those streets. And so, as far as crime and all of those things, I don't think that it increases crime or would increase crime. If you're parking on a street, I don't know how that would impact anything, but to each his own opinion. But I agree in some of the instances where, yeah, maybe it's not as safe, but so I don't know.
Right.
That's just my thoughts.
Thank you, Councilmember Coakley. Councilmember Shack.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to start by saying I think our ordinance in regards to parking needs some work. I think that whether that is even just a online permit that you can print out that we have available that allows you up to 3 days or something, I don't know. I'm not sure that this is it. I think what we're in both regards, we're saying let's be prescriptive. Let's be prescriptive to allow parking. Let's be prescriptive to consider one-time circumstances. To me, both of those things require a tremendous amount of work. And so I'm not sure we want to be in a position where we're asking people to constantly have us solve their parking problems. We'll deal with it if they come to us. On the flip side, I agree. I am concerned that there are some streets that it's very dark, it's very narrow, they have special considerations, it's windy, it's a cul-de-sac, whatever it is, where maybe ongoing parking is just not going to work. And so now I think we'll get an influx of requests if we pass this ordinance for no parking requests, and that will be a tremendous amount of work for staff. So I still think this is a problem. I still think we need a solution to help people. Again, this came up in COVID. This is something that was a real problem that people came to us with. They were working from home. Their young adult kids were coming home and being home, and that has not, the pressure valve on that has not totally released, particularly in the summer when you have college students returning home and are really home all summer long. It is an issue. So I'm not prepared to move this ordinance forward tonight. I think we need to troubleshoot some ideas a little bit more. I do want to say parking is allowed on the streets. People can park on the streets when trash is being picked up. I think I respect the people that made comments tonight. I think some of it's a little bit of a distraction because many of the issues that are being addressed, MME, those are all issues that happen in the daytime when parking is allowed on the street. And we have all parked on the street. We all need street parking. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater either. Let's keep thinking about what makes sense here, and maybe we can talk about it in a study session next year. But I'm just not there today.
Councilmember Romali.
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree with Councilmember Shack. We have online permitting. I was really interested in one of the comments regarding suburbs of Chicago, which require a daily check-in if a car is going to be parked on the street overnight, which enables the city to know that a car is connected to a resident on the street. That it's a very simple process, and if the license plate is not registered, the car is towed, or whatever, there's enforcement. So I thought this was an interesting idea. Again, maybe something that we can, kind of explore in some follow-up to this. And I also agree that some of the kind of situations that were brought forward by residents, I understand it, but they're already existing. This would not change that. So the issues with daytime parking are issues because we have on-street parking during the day. So I guess, I didn't quite follow the logic of those comments. But again, if we have an online process for getting our fire permits, then maybe we can look at instituting something similar for either an overnight, for our kids. Our kids are having some friends over. We have relatives coming in to stay for the weekend or whatever, and it's a simple online process or something like that. Hopefully that's, hooks up with the police department's, kind of information system and looking at that. But again, I think this is not ready for prime time in terms of this ordinance, and that we need to take it back and do some more work. Thank you.
Councilmember Calvert.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I agree with my colleagues on the dais, and I also, thinking about all the exceptions or possible unintended consequences, one of the things that I think about is we've worked really hard to beautify the city by doing things like burying utilities, and I start worrying about being a forest of parking parking instruction signs, and so I feel like this sort of got the conversation started and helped build awareness, first of all, about how people on different sides of this issue feel. And I thought it was very, I know where the mayor lives, and I know that neighborhood very well. It's very different than mine, and that's the thing about Minnetonka. Every neighborhood is extremely different. I live on Baker Road, one of the busiest north-south thoroughfares. You can park on Baker Road. Is it a great idea? Probably not, but sometimes, like my next door neighbor's parents come to visit, and her children come home and visit, and so they sometimes park on the street. My parents are afraid to back out of my parking, out of my driveway, because it's such a busy road. And so, I think about that. We're talking about overnight parking. And so when I think about the mayor's children coming home, I know there are marriages coming up, and there's probably going to be things happening at the house. To be able to have a couple of relatives over, I feel like this is a problem we can solve by, permitting or coming up. I think we can come up with some solutions that kind of thread the needle here, but I don't think we're quite there yet. And so I hope that this discussion about both of the ordinances that we're discussing tonight kind of helps clarify sort of how things come forward, and the fact that, we don't come up here with our minds made up, and things come forward from colleagues or from people in the community, and that sometimes the recommendation from staff on adoption or not adoption is highly technical. It has nothing to do with how they feel about it. It doesn't mean they want us to do it one way or another. It actually, like in development proposals, it just means that it doesn't violate anything, and so they have no legal basis for denying, for recommending denial. And so, some of what you're reading in the packet doesn't mean that they're saying, propose the ordinance. They're saying that the decision we have to make is approval of the ordinance or not. So I just hope that just this conversation shows that, we didn't come up here with our minds made up. We're not ramming anything through. We're literally noodling on it. We've had study sessions about it. And, one of the things that I really appreciate about our staff and this council is they're extremely thoughtful, and we bring it up because it was important to somebody, and not necessarily important to us, because we are here to represent our constituents. So I agree with what everyone says, and I feel like we're getting there, but we're not there tonight.
Councilmember Wilburn.
Yeah, so there's some issues that these discussions have brought up, and I'm just too tired. Excuse me. Sorry. tired to address them right now. But I will tell you, first of all, equity is not just skin color or what country you are from. But if I tell you that I am concerned about something because of equity, that is my motivation. And I take offense to the implication that it is something else. And that is it.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilburn. Are there any other comments? I'm sensing, I mean, I can comment on this. I'm sensing that there's not enough, there are not enough votes to adopt the ordinance. So we can take no action and make no motion and just move on. So does anyone want to make a motion, or should we just move on? All right, we will consider this matter closed for today, and we may pick it up again. But yeah, what I'm looking at in front of me says do not adopt the ordinance. It means no action, so we will take no action tonight. So thank you for everyone's comments. That brings us to item 14D, which is a concept plan for Amira Villas Minnetonka at 901 Carlson Parkway. Ms. Wishnak.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. This is a concept plan for Amira at, as you said, near 901 Carlson. To remind you what a concept plan is and what it is not. It is not a formal proposal. It's an opportunity for people who are proposing a project like this developer to gain some input from the council about where their plans are at, what you think of the plans, and whether or not you think the project has merit. So that's really what we're doing. As you recall, the developer holds a neighborhood meeting. They go to the Planning Commission. They also hear from the public there. You just have a discussion tonight. You don't have any public input at this stage at your council meeting. And then depending on the outcome, they'll go through and have an approval or an application rather, if they want to proceed. So the project that was built last year, it opened, the Amira here, that's 186 units of housing, and it's for seniors. And the proposal is to the south of the building, and this is the proposal for townhome units. And so there are various types of townhome units that are in the concept elevation package. You can see here some of the package views and kind of the perspective drawings that are here. The interior layouts of some of the units, again, I won't get too in-depth in this because the developer or the applicant will get into the specifics. The input that we received so far at the neighborhood meeting, obviously United Property is the controlling interest in the property. They are age restricted. It would reduce traffic versus a hotel, which was originally anticipated in the plans, as you might be aware. There was some suggestions to add staff and amenities and also give existing residents the first opportunity to lease. And I think there was some conversation about opening up housing stock later on at the Planning Commission. There was some concerns expressed about shadowing and stress on the existing amenities and some of the construction activity being impactful to the people living in that building. The Planning Commission did like the larger unit size, and about opening up that inventory was talked about. They suggested reducing the number of buildings but increasing the number of units, talking about more density and more intensity because it's a fairly intense building with the Carlson Towers there today. They also talked about there was merit in the concept moving forward. There was lots of discussion as well, I don't have this on the slide, but about sustainability items and some of the ideas that they always talk about with developers when they come forward in terms of water reuse and solar and all of that. So the questions for you tonight: is there merit for the concept to proceed to a formal development review? If yes, why? If not, why? And then the other question is, what would make the concept better? And Mayor, before you do that, maybe hear from the developer and the applicant about what they're proposing.
Very good. That sounds good. And I would invite the applicant forward and, as our normal practice, give us your name and address and then fill us in about what your vision is for Amira Villas.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor, members of
Thanks
the
for hanging in there with us.
Been a very active evening here. I think oh, there we go. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again for reviewing our concept sketch for Amira Villas, Minnetonka. I will try to briefly run through this as some of this is redundant to what was in the agenda, the packet. Want to respect your time this evening. So as you well are aware of, we opened Amira Minnetonka in June of last year, 186 unit, active adult, 55 plus independent living community. The project we are looking at is just the parcel just to the south. This is a perspective standing on the lot looking north at the completed building and the amenity deck that you see before you there. Oh, sorry. So just to touch on some of the project highlights, the design of the building that we're proposing here is a little bit unique in the sense of a townhome, multifamily. It's a little bit of a hybrid approach. Our attempt is to really kind of maximize the density that we can get there while still listening to the market as to what they're looking for out of their housing options. So we're proposing 9 3-story buildings, very urban design, walk-up front door. All the garages are located along the rear inside a private drive. So in a sense, they're pseudo out of sight from the public eye as much as possible. Shallow pitch roof. These are 3-story buildings, so trying to minimize that height using a shallow pitched roof. And all the exterior materials will be of high grade, complementary to the existing buildings in the Carlson community there. Each building will have a private entrance, a little stairwell, and then a private elevator. Elevator is called a Lula elevator, so it's not like a full-blown commercial elevator, but it is a commercial elevator, but a restricted use. So they're just not as large. Again, our target market here is an active adult 55. Maybe a younger senior is really who we're hearing from for this product. Guest parking will all be located on the east side of the site. This drive aisle is already constructed as part of the original improvements with Amira Minnetonka. So there's currently 23 stalls located on the west side. Sidewalks will provide connectivity around the site and connectivity for our residents to access Amira Minnetonka. The southwest corner over here, really haven't developed that yet, but we're just looking at adding some level of amenity space for not only these villa residents, but the community as a whole, the Amira Minnetonka 186 unit residents as well. Looking at the units, again, 28 units. Again, just hearing what we've learned from our market there, Amira Minnetonka, a year later, will be almost 90% leased up with a large waiting list for the bigger units. The only units that are really left are of the smaller variety. So trying to understand what is the best use for this 2.5 acres or 2.2 acres to the south there, and really try to identify how can we best utilize with the larger units. Larger units going just horizontal, there just isn't enough real estate to go horizontal with larger units. So took this design and tried to kind of stack them. So there are 2 units above garage space. So each unit here will be of 2 or 3 bedrooms. Again, larger variety, 1,600 to 2,300 square feet. We haven't finalized the square footage yet, but they will be of the larger variety. The largest home available at Amira Minnetonka is 1,470 square feet. So just the one starting here at 1,600 is substantially larger than the largest one at Amira. So each home will be, kind of age-targeted design, one level living. Maybe you're familiar with a townhome where you kind of walk in off your garage and then it's really all just steps. And that's really what we're trying to avoid here. So the lowest level is really just parking garage, and then some private space storage, mechanical, mudroom, that type of stuff. And then there'd be a stairwell or a garage, or I'm sorry, a stairwell or an elevator that would gain them access to the second floor, which would be units, or to the third floor, which again would just be units. So there's no stairs within the confines of the home itself. Oversized decks, upscale finishes, again, just what we're hearing from the market, expansive windows, because we can have this opportunity of having 3, 4, exterior walls, we can take advantage of more daylight, and then each home will have its own climate control, furnace, air conditioning, mechanicals, and so on. This was also in your packet from the neighborhood meeting that was conducted on May 9th. We had a lot of great conversations. I won't go over all these items, but we did hear some feedback from planning commissioner members as well, so we're taking all this feedback into consideration and really appreciate your feedback tonight as well. If you haven't had an opportunity to stop by Emira Minnetonka, I would invite you to do so. It is a gorgeous community, a gorgeous addition to the Carlson Center, a gorgeous addition to Minnetonka. Just trying to give you an idea of some of the scale and the quantity and area of amenities that we have. This is just the amenity deck that we have out in the backyard, kind of looking south this is kind of looking south at the area that we're proposing for the Emira Villas. Again, I won't go into too much detail, but you can just see the amount of amenity spaces, seating areas, fire pits. This space right here is the green space that's on the north side of the site. It's a very large courtyard. There's actually a very large green space, just a grass area. And then, of course, we have community gardens on the south side of the site as well. Inside the community, again, just lots and lots of amenity spaces: club room, great room, sky lounge, library, parlor. Each of these are different spaces. You can get a sense of the scale, the size, the finish levels. They are just so well received from our residents, and we're excited about maybe having the opportunity of bringing 28 more homes to be able to share in these amenity spaces. Again, we're just more amenity spaces if you hadn't had a chance. We're so proud of this community. It really is our flagship, Emira. This is our third building we've opened in the metro area, and just trying to figure out how to do more of them, because it really is beautiful. Just some quick takeaways. It opened up in June of last year. It is managed by Great Lakes Management, and we are proposing that the villas is really just synergies between the two. It is very similar resident, similar age restrictions. They will have full use of all the amenities, 28 homes. We're trying to strike the balance between enough homes, but not so much height, not so much density, just a nice good feel for the use of the property. The villas, the larger homes are what are in demand, is what we're hearing. And then 10% of the villas will meet the income qualifications for the city of Minnetonka. So, that being said, appreciate your feedback as we would be hopeful to prepare an application for this.
Very good. So I'll ask the council if they have any questions for you before you sit down, and then
Sure.
we'll move forward. So, Councilor Wilburn.
So I have a couple of questions, but the first regarding the stairways. So, are there stairways inside the buildings, but not inside the units?
That is correct. Would you be able to pull up that floor plan again? Yeah. That may be helpful. Yes, thank you. So if you can envision, this is an idea of a. Thank you. I'll stop trying to drive. Yeah, if you could scoot it to I think maybe that's all. So as you can see here, the lowest level is garages, flex rooms, mud rooms, mechanical rooms. The front door, as you see kind of in the center of the building, that's really the only stairwell that enters into each one of the buildings. and you take then either the stairwell up to, now what you see on the right side is the second level, and you have an entry door to the right or an entry door to the left, and that is your home. So once you're in your home, which you can access by elevator or the one common stairwell, there's no stairs within the home. And then you take the stairs or the elevator up again to the third level where there's 2 more homes. So in this picture here, there are 4 homes. The larger homes have a 2-car garage, which again, we really hear favorable responses from the market, having an opportunity to have a 2-car garage versus a typical multifamily where you just get a parking stall in the garage and that's it. The smaller homes, we're proposing a single stall garage, but nonetheless, there's additional driveway space for guest parking, plus the 23 stalls on the east side of the property for additional guest parking over there. So did that answer?
Yes, it did.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
So my other question is not related to the plan itself, and I was told you were given a heads up this, so it doesn't look like I'm ambushing you here. But we've gotten some communications with concerns about some of the subcontractors or the companies that you work with. And so, one, are you aware of those allegations? And 2, what do you do as a company to ensure that any companies that you work with are following proper practices and there's no wage theft or worker abuse?
Yeah, that was brought to my attention shortly before the meeting tonight. I don't think it would be appropriate for me to respond to the communication that was received because we have not had an opportunity to review that, but at which time we as a company would be happy to provide a formal response to the council here. But I do have a statement from our company that I'm happy to share with you, that we take concerns voiced by subcontractors, both union and non-union, very seriously. Subcontractors on all company-affiliated projects are required to comply with federal and state labor, benefit, workers' compensation, and wage laws. If we learn of an unfair labor practice, accusations made against subcontractors who have worked on our projects, we investigate the accusations in close partnership with our general contractors, and when appropriate, we'll stop working with certain subcontractors.
Thank you. Our council, are there other questions? Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant, or are we good? Oh, Councilor Romali?
Of course.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, I do have one question. What sustainability aspects will you be bringing to this development and plan going forward?
Yeah, so at this stage, we have not really developed the plan set as much, but yes, we do. We will take sustainability measures into our design practice. EV charging outlets, water efficient fixtures. I do just plan on enrolling in the Energy Design Assistance Program offered by Xcel Energy and CenterPoint Energy, which they help kind of guide decisions for the most energy efficiency that we could design to. So we will take all those things into account as we further along the plan set.
Okay. Mayor, may I follow up with a comment?
You may.
Thank you, Mayor. I would highly encourage that. You're a flagship. The current development apartment building is a flagship for Emera. I'd love to see this be, these townhomes be a sustainability flagship, something that we can point to in Minnetonka. We just passed the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. We do have goals in terms of green building practices, and would love to partner and see that happen here for this, and something that we can point to in this community, and something that you can use as an example to others in and beyond our community, both for you and for other developers. And I look forward to learning more and seeing this come to fruition, seeing you work with staff on those and Xcel and our other partners on things like heat pumps and other options that can make this the best possible development, something that we can be really proud to have in our community. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback.
Are there other questions for the applicant? All right. Now you get to go sit down, but thank you very much for your presentation. And I will say that I've been to Amira on numerous occasions, and it's a spectacular building, and I'm not surprised that you're as filled up as you are. So this is a concept plan, and we've got 3 questions before us. Again, abracadabra. There they are. And Council, let's just address these questions and we can get out of here. What are your thoughts on, this concept moving forward? Councilmember Calvert?
I'll start on this one. I actually think there is merit for this concept. I watched the Planning Commission meeting and I agreed with a lot of what was suggested there. This area is sort of ripe for density, and so this provides some density, and I appreciate that you're trying to keep this sort of neighborhood feel by not having too much height or mass. But the suggestion was to add a story to one of the buildings or so without sacrificing the size of the units, and in order to provide more green space, which I thought was very intriguing, and I like that. And I thought they had been concerned about shadowing. I think, we want to make sure that we're not shading people out, especially if they haven't been shaded before. I think the concept is lovely, and I will say I just moved my parents from Ohio, where they had a villa-style home on just a gorgeous place. It was mission impossible to find single-level living, which is what it is. Just so hard, very expensive. This is a housing type that we really need, and so I'm very excited to see. It's sort of the same kind of concept as where they're living, except that these are much larger. It's a much larger building that they're living in. But that did get me to think, is this rental or is this owned? That was one of the things that I'm sorry, I forgot to ask.
So yes, these are rentals. These are an extension of the current rental community next door at Amira, Minnetonka. Yeah.
All right.
And if I may, we really appreciate that comment from Planning Commission as well. In our design, the garages are what drive the ability. Like, if you just add another floor, you don't have any garages. There's nowhere to put the vehicles other than surface parking. But this resident demographic isn't necessarily wanting to park outside uncovered. So we really appreciate that. Just trying to keep the design in context of, we're trying to maximize density, height, all that with the ability to park vehicles in a garage.
It's that darn parking. I mean, it's just a problem.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
All right. Other questions? Councilmember Foster Bolton?
It's a comment, because I read the notes for the Planning Commission, and I agree with Maxwell when she said, to get rid of some of the buildings, to save green space. And I drove by there today, and it's stunning. It's gorgeous. It's lovely. Again, but I'm like, wow, we could have some density here. And I have to say it too, that this looks really beautiful and really nice, but really expensive. And so it's going to price a lot of people out. And I know we're going to have affordable housing in Minnetonka and all that stuff. I just need to say it out loud, that it's another, I think there's total merit for this, but I just wanted to point all this stuff out that I usually do about affordable housing.
Mayor, I wasn't.
Yes.
I
Go
wasn't
ahead.
quite done.
Yeah,
before.
go ahead. You're fine. You're good.
So no worries. It's valid comments. One of the other things is that there are, mature adults that are fully independent and they're not ready to move to a tiny place. They're accustomed to living in a larger home, and they're not ready for these. So one of the housing types, and all new construction is expensive. The affordable homes that we just approved are $700,000 to build. So, I mean, it's just going to be expensive because that's the world we live in right now. But I do really appreciate that the size, because that is this is another unicorn, the single level living at this size. So it's very hard to find. And I know the Planning Commission was really excited about it. What would make the concept better? I mean, they talked about places for dogs. There is green space nearby, so it may not be an issue. But it's a point well taken, because this is a very dog-friendly city, and it's something that people would appreciate. But what would make the concept better? There's not all that much in it. It's kind of a bare bones concept because it's conceptual, but just having a lovely landscaping plan that has a lot of natives, native plantings would be great, and anything that you can put in to help us achieve our sustainability goals. To Councilmember Romali's point, I think would make whatever the concept is better. But I really do like a lot of what's there, and if we can figure out, I mean, to have that property where it is, and not have a certain level of density, it's not a disqualifier, because I know what you're going for, but it almost seems like a lost opportunity in some ways. So just throwing that out there.
Other, Councilor Wilburn, or go ahead.
Yeah, so I would echo what's been said before about maybe finding a way to have higher density, and my environmentalist heart when I hear about the 2-car garages, but I also understand the market, and so I would say yes, there is merit for this concept to go forward. I like the idea of EV charging, and I wouldn't, if there's 2 EV vehicles parked in the garage, then I'm not not as unhappy about it. The other thing I would, echoing what Councilmember Romali said, as far as sustainability, I had the opportunity to visit a development in Minneapolis where they're doing something called low embodied carbon, where they look at, aside from sustainable things like heat pumps for heating and cooling and other environmentally friendly things that you add, they also look into carbon that's produced in the building materials, and if there's a tear down, reusing the material, all these things for the overall carbon footprint of building that property. So if you could do some investigation on that, and I can even get you in touch with people who know more about it than I do. That would be my suggestion.
Other comments? Councilmember Shack.
Thank you, Mayor. I will say, I think the Planning Commission addressed almost everything that I was thinking. I mean, I think this is beautiful. I think it makes sense. I'm not worried about the shadowing, considering that this project came to us with that parcel being a hotel. And so, that was certainly anticipated for that. I mean, it's approved there. So I do, you have been here before, and you know how difficult it is to get high density projects approved. And this spot, it wouldn't be difficult to do something much bigger. And so a little bit of me is like, oh, we're really missing an opportunity here because this is a spot. But I understand that the idea of balancing that with the housing product, and and having some diversity of product, and getting a few affordable units is certainly enticing as well. So I think it has merit. I wish we're taking advantage of this space for a little bit more density. This, that area also has a ton of green space. I'm not overly concerned about that parcel being overused because there is a lot of natural features in the Carlson area altogether.
Other comments? Councilmember Coakley?
Thank you, Mayor. I would say that I'm always for housing. I mean, I always prefer some more affordable housing or affordable housing. But that's not the case. But if we can get homes for people, I'm always for that. So that's all I have to say. I don't have much.
Anyone else? Councilmember Romali?
Yep, final. So just getting to the questions, yes, there's merit. I think this is a good development to do, the good site to do this adjacent to Emira 1. It can share the amenities, so it is sustainable in that sense. It's adding to the sense of the community. It's good design. It's good addition to the neighborhood. The fact that it's 28 units, if it does draw, in terms of our affordable housing concerns, one thing that Commissioner Banks brought up in the Planning Commission that I thought was well said is that, if this draws, especially from, current Minnetonka residents who decide to rent there, then it opens up some housing opportunities in Minnetonka, hopefully. So, he was very in favor of it for that reason. I echo that. Glad that it's including the city mandated affordability units. And again, everything else has been said in terms of making it better. Again, encourage, as the Planning Commission did, the sunlight study to make sure that we're doing the potential buffer between the pool, between the main building and the potential villas in case there's some landscaping that can be done that can assuage some of the residents' concerns that we've just heard most recently this afternoon, if that's possible as well. And, again, the stormwater, I remember from the Planning Commission, that's going to be stored underneath. I think that's a prime opportunity to potentially use that stormwater for irrigation or other things like that. So I'd encourage, exploration of that and the other sustainability things that we discussed. So those are my comments. One other comment, I really appreciated the staff's report's explanation of the concept plan and the application, including the role of residents for anybody who's still watching at this point. While I'll just quote from it, while the city has an obligation to provide information and feedback opportunities, interested residents are expected to accept the responsibility to educate themselves about the project and the review process, provide constructive, timely, and germane feedback, and stay informed and involved throughout the entire process. I encourage the residents of Emira to do that, and I encourage Minnetonka residents of every project regarding every project to do the same. So thank you, staff.
Thank you, Councilmember Romali. Any other comments? Otherwise, I'll weigh in. I like this proposal. I totally understand the demand for single level living. I remember when my in-laws were looking at a place to live, and they wanted to move out of their home, and my father-in-law really wanted to own a place and not rent a place, and it turned out that they couldn't work it out. The place that they wanted to go to wasn't ready for them yet, and I said to him, well, Rich, you have to understand, at your age everything is rented. and I think you get to a certain point in life where renting really does make a lot of sense, because who needs to, what do you need the equity for? And so I think having a rental product targeted to people that are 55 plus really has a lot of logic. And most of the things that I would recommend have been covered, but I have a few thoughts. And I would encourage you as a developer to read the climate action and adaptation plan, because there are a lot of suggestions in terms of what we as a city are going to be working toward and encouraging our residents to do, and the types of investments that we are hoping that they make in their properties to be more environmentally conscious, because it's not if we need it, we need that now. And so I think that there are some ideas there that might be helpful to this project. I've heard my fellow council members talk about the opportunity for density, and I think about that a little bit, because I like what you're proposing here, and I totally get, when I looked at your layout, I totally get the parking issue. So for high end, you're this a high end development, and people really like having garages, and I think that's great. But in listening to you talk about the fact that Emira, the first phase of Emira is fully rented except for the smaller units, part of me wonders and say, well, if we felt we needed greater density, you could build another building and not have those small units in it and achieve some of the same things that you're trying to achieve here. Maybe not as distinctively and so forth, but there are paths perhaps to both greater density and the larger units that are in demand. And I totally get that. People live, a lot of people live in very nice big houses, and they're in their mind they're still downsizing, but they need elbow room and they need space. And so I think that's the conundrum. But I think and I'm not saying I don't support this project, but I also think there might be other ways to achieve what you need for the market with a different building that could offer perhaps more units. And so I throw that out as a for what it's worth. But I went to the groundbreaking at the first Emira. I went to the ribbon cutting. I went and campaigned there in the last election, and it's a phenomenally beautiful building. And my sister-in-law and brother-in-law live in a Emira building in Bloomington, and they really like it. And I just think that's a product that there's a significant need for, and people who live in Minnetonka like the idea of staying in Minnetonka. The location is so convenient. It's a fantastic location, just in terms of freeway access, in terms of amenity access, in terms of access to Southdale. I don't have to sell the location to you. You already know that. But I think that the idea of opening up existing homes to younger families as people move here but still have the opportunity to stay in Minnetonka, that's a powerful notion, and I think that's a real selling point. I was maybe a little surprised to hear that that it's the larger units that are selling, but then when I think about it, my situation, what would I want, that's the type of thing that I'd be looking for. So I think you're really on a good track. And I would just encourage you, perhaps with your architect, to maybe consider some density increasing opportunities there. But I think this looks great the way it is too. So I don't want to send you on a wild goose chase. But I think we have to ask those questions and to just optimize this great piece of property. So those are my comments. And so I think we're just about done. Okay, thank you, Ms. Wishenak. I hope it's helpful.
It is. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So item 15 is appointments and reappointments. We have none. And item 16 is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn? Councilmember Wilburn.
I move adjournment.
Is there a second? Councilmember Calvert.
I will second.
All right. We have a motion by Councilmember Wilburn and a second by Councilmember Calvert. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
I know.